last night, so we're going to pick up this morning. Phones are not on. We're just going to catch up on the bread and circuses of the last 24 hours, and then we'll take calls tonight. That was The Edges in Your Mind, Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms. So is the curve, by the way. If you claim that you've seen the curve, it's in your mind. You're bending the horizon, which technically makes you a curvert. If you go by the old IPS lexicon, I want to say great news for those of you in Las Vegas and Los Angeles. I know in Vegas the temperatures were like 111, but you weren't hit by an earthquake on 6/6/2024. And if you ignore the first two, you kind of get a 666. It was prophesied by Ryan Garcia, who was Me Too'd at the Bohemian Grove. He had a prophecy that there was going to be an earthquake that was going to destroy Vegas and Los Angeles. And, despite Ryan Garcia warning people to evacuate, nobody did. But it doesn't matter because the earthquake didn't happen.
I have predicted that there will be earthquake June 6th.
June 6th?
June
Any
6th.
specific location or just
LA and Vegas.
On June
6th?
sixth.
On
What?
June 6th of 2024.
I love how these two individuals are just totally credulous about this. Wow, there's going to be an earthquake. This guy gets punched in the head a lot. He's a source I can trust. It's like they don't even ask, how do you know? They just roll with it. And this is how these MMA types are. They're given, and this guy's a fighter, a boxer. These boxers, MMA types, these are all disinfo agents. And what I think happens is that they're given certain propaganda lines because they want these perspectives spouted from paragons of toxic masculinity ensconced on the far right. And so he's just a propaganda disseminator here, in my opinion. And I think part of this prediction thing may be to add noise. I mean, if you look at the Metascript breakdowns, we're the only ones who do it without the presupposition that real things are happening. We're just describing how fake is predicted in the fake news and fake media through predictive programming and otherwise. So, we're the ones who are analyzing it correctly. And yet you have all these others who are just shooting from the hip, making all kinds of predictions. And I think it just muddies the waters, reduces the signal to noise ratio. And I think it does so on purpose because they want to hide the genuine manipulation of media with all these rabbit trails and red herrings that, these things just really destroy people's credibility when they don't come true. So again, Ryan Garcia's prediction about J6 has not come true, unless I missed something last night. I was just listening to a podcast. It was actually Ann Coulter, of all people, and she had Scott Adams on. And, whatever you think about Scott Adams, he's an alt-right culture warrior now, the guy from Dilbert. But he is very intelligent, even though he's in the box. And he has made some very astute observations. And one of the things he said is that, and this is from his background in banking, is that there are predictive models you can create, and you can make many predictive models. And if people only see the ones that are accurate, it makes it look like you are accurate. So, for example, how many times have I talked about gematria calculators, where some internet Twitter prophet's like, on this date, this will happen because it's 333 days from this, and this word adds to this number. And they're able to bring out several gematria calculators, Chaldean, English Ordinal, Pythagorean, and they take out these calculators and they make it fit. And they force the puzzle pieces. But it doesn't look like it because they don't show you the misses. They only show you the hits. This is akin to the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where you fire a bunch of shots and you draw a circle around any tight groups. And you say, look at me, I'm accurate. Look at all these bullseyes. And it's like, well, no, you just selectively ignored your misses. Well, what Scott Adams was saying is that this is how climate models work. That there's like more than 100 climate change models. And he doesn't believe in climate change because people tend to ignore the models that fail to predict. They go with the ones that do. And that this is a routine thing. And he also made a fascinating point about how documentaries can convince you of things that the facts don't support. So it's another important thing here. So the documentary, of course, can market an idea. It can sell you on a concept. It can appeal to your emotions. It can engage in all kinds of logically fallacious approaches. But because it's told in a narrative and a story, the facts, or rather the assertions, are so rapid fire, you can't just debunk it as you watch it. And that's by design, it's to overwhelm you. I mean, think about how the mass media works. I often talk about how you got 48 hours of news every day. Yeah, that's to bowl you over, so you don't have time to parse it. Lucky for us, the auto hoaxers, we have the ability to categorically dismiss certain types of claims. And we don't have to dig through every single story and investigate. We can go ahead and say, okay, well, this is in the category of not enough information to know it's true. Now, Scott Adams, dangerously close to auto hoaxing, said when he sees these big stories, and we're not talking about regular news like the weather, which you can't even trust him on, or even you can't really trust him on anything when it comes to, but my point of it is, he was suggesting, this is again from the Scott Adams podcast, that when a big bold story comes up, that 99% of it's fake until proven real. He said, I just assume 99% of it's BS, and then I work my way down. So in other words, he suspends judgment on the whole story and then accepts it as he can verify facts. Now, I say that he's dangerously close to auto hoaxing, but he's not, because he's in the box. You can be intelligent, you can be perceptive, and you can be also in the box. And that's what happens when you're a partisan. Since he's on the political horseshoe, he only aims his criticism and skepticism at the other side. And he will not see outside of this until he recognizes, which he won't. None of these big name popular culture warriors will ever step outside of their box. And I don't even think they know they're in it. Like, look how close he is. He's recognizing, hey, this news is BS, this is BS. But he sees this on a item by item basis, but he doesn't recognize that the whole world stage is built on an edifice of lies. And that's one of the first steps here. I think the first major paradigm shift is to recognize that there is a world stage. It's just not an expression to describe things in a vague way. When I say world stage and worldview, I'm talking about a model. We have the climate model, climate models. Well, there's a model of the world that we all kind of agreed upon to live within. We didn't know that is what it is. We just sort of accepted it through osmosis, through habit, through tradition. You inherit this thing, you're indoctrinated into it, and if you don't question its parameters, it becomes your default worldview. But if you don't recognize that this is an option, this is a model, then you're just going to be in it, and it will be your box for life. You'll be in your Truman Show. And it's just a model. And this is an important concept. It's difficult when it's big picture to understand why it matters to your day to day existence. But we're talking about your worldview, your frame of reference, and then how you're going to interpret news or information that you receive based on where you're standing. And this does matter. If you're where Scott Adams is and a nuke goes off, you think it's real. No matter how clever, how insightful, he's going to be scared like everybody else, mad at the other side. So he's not outside of the worldview in which nukes are real. Interestingly, one of his, I guess, colleagues, Candace Owen, has been denying dinosaurs lately. And it's like, okay, which is progress in a way. It doesn't go far enough. Maybe it's even tainting this area of media skepticism to have these, alt-right culture warriors take these ideas and platform them, because now it's by association. Like, look, I share a bunch of ideas with the guy who wants to hold a conference on how to tie nooses and hold tribunals. Like, yeah, you see what I mean? And then you get Ryan Garcia here. It's like, oh, you're predicting things about the media, like Ryan Garcia, who said we were going to get earthquaked, which again didn't happen. Let me see who's in the chat here. Joined by John Francis, Lesko, Junders Plunkett, JC, Armin Reese, Symbia, Configuration Manager. Says IPS Morning Drive. Frank Murr, Upside Down Guy, Biden 2024. Oh yeah, riding with Biden. Look, I'm going to endorse Biden, but I'm not going to do it under the impression that he's going to fix anything or that he's a leader. I'm going to do it as a statement. Because it's not enough just to not vote. Because not voting is a world stage position, like I'm a vote refusenik. I refuse the system. No, I'm going to vote for Biden knowing it's BS to prove I don't care about the process. I don't believe it matters. But moreover, the anti position, the knee jerk, reflexive, reactionary, truther, conspiracy crowd will vote for Trump. I mean, that's what Q is about, getting them all to vote for Trump. And it's like, am I going to be the only person in Trutherville to stand by Biden? And the answer is yes. And I'm doing so to make a point about lockstep conformity among so called freethinkers. So they can bash me for voting for Biden, and I'll say, oh, you think voting matters? Because it obviously doesn't. Tomanoid3 says The Crow is set to be released in the United States by Lionsgate Films on August 23rd, 2024. Let's go, Brandon reboot. Okay, now there's a couple of things about this. First of all, Brandon Lee, he had a 331 death date, which is Nipsey's death date. He wasn't 33, but he was close. But he died in a way that was reminiscent of his father's death, which was predicted in a movie in which he dies on a set. I mean, this is, again, life follows psyops. Life imitates psyops. So Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, grows up, and on the set of The Crow, he dies when a weapon um, loaded with real ammunition is used on a scene and he gets killed. That's at least what you're supposed to believe. And then, of course, later it turns out, because we had this recent shooting at the Rust movie set with Alec Baldwin, the Rust movie set had a someone was connected to the Crow Salvation movie. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, here we go. The assistant director who handed Baldwin a loaded gun that led to the shooting. If you remember this whole story, there was a crew member. Assistant director David Halls on Rust was a crew member for Crow Salvation. Just kind of an interesting connection because, again, in this, the Brandon Lee died in 1993 in this on-set gun accident. But anyway, a couple more things about The Crow being re-released. Uh, and JL 26 has pointed this out. He suggested that The Crow is a Crown reference. Crow, Crown, of course, and then the character the Crow is a dying, resurrecting character. The Raven, or the Crow rather, is like a phoenix symbol in this movie, sort of like how the bat has been repurposed as a phoenix. But another connection here, Brandon, the shooting, the Rust shooting, another connection here. Baldwin shoots a guy with Trump's birthday. Baldwin is Trump deranged. He plays Trump on SNL and he says, I wish that a meteor would hit the White House. And after he says this, Don't Look Up is in the news, the trailers, and it's like in 6 months and 14 days, the Earth is going to be hit by a comet. And Trump's birthday is 6/14. So I was making these connections between these on-set shootings and this upcoming staged Trump event, the JFK-esque event that they're planning for Trump. And, as we're talking about this, we're looking at this Crow reboot coming out, Brandon Lee. Well, Brandon, and this is again JL26 pointed this out, he suggested that Brandon is code for Brand Don, as in Donald Trump. And another interesting point here, if you remember when Trump was campaigning I think this was in 2016, someone rushed to the stage and grabbed at Trump's ankles, and basically Secret Service threw him off. And it was like, here, Trump rushed off stage. There's a couple of things. Someone had yelled gun. Here we go. Someone rushed the stage and Secret Service surrounded Trump. That was in Ohio. But anyway, the guy who did this, the guy who rushed the stage, and I have a video of it here if you haven't seen it.
So, folks, here's what happens. I will call up Carrier, the president, because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
Trump was much more robust and energetic back then. Is it the same guy? People are often pointing out that there's like a body double. It's a different Trump, and it's like, sometimes there does seem to be a more chill, calm Trump, and then you got this rambunctious Trump, and some have suggested that one of the Trumps is actually his so-called dead brother. Anyway, so it turns out, though, the protester who rushes the stage, and I believe he was interviewed on CNN after. He's from Brandon County. And this is before Let's Go Brandon became a big meme. So, again, what is the big connection here? Brand, Dawn, shooting, assassination, hints, and then, of course, Brandon Lee, Crow, Crown. We'll probably get deeper into this later, but anyway, just to add on to what the caller said, the Crow being released may have some serious implications for this broader script. Upside Down Guy says Japan surrendered prior to the nukes going off there, meaning the United States could have had permission to stack TNT. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering about Godzilla, because Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. And if all these nations are cooperating on the space program, fake space, the ISS, then they're faking everything else together as well, including nukes. Which means that there must have been some agreement that this Godzilla character would be somehow a propaganda tool to convey this message. I mean, I'm suggesting here that this PSYOP entertainment complex is global, and they all have to be agreeing on these things. So, yeah, I am kind of interested in the behind the scenes. They must have agreed on this stuff. It's not like America's inflicting PSYOPs on other countries and tricking them. No, this is top down. This is top down control. There's only one government. There's only government. Big Brother has millions of facets to trick you into thinking that it's decentralized and chaos, but no, this is the New World Order. Okay, continuing here. Upside Down Guy says, I'd only vote to get on the jury duty list in order to convict a criminal. Yeah, I have a friend who's on jury duty right now, and I'm actually learning quite a bit. Like, I'm not going to gas stations after sunset anymore. I know there's another tactic has to do with carjacking. Like, if you don't want to get carjacked, you just got to avoid certain gas stations, but you also have to not be staring at your phone while your car is idling and you're just sitting there. Tom103 says she has a crow tattoo or something. Who would this be? Now, I want to continue with this because again, we talked about the different phoenix symbols. And the phoenix is death and resurrection, and that's the whole point of this Trump head wound thing, this dying, resurrecting thing. So you have the phoenix bird, the actual bird that burns itself and comes back. The American eagle is a phoenix. The dove is a phoenix in the flood myth, who brings the olive branch after the flood waters have receded, just replace fire with water. Same theme. So the crow is a phoenix. The bat has been represented as a phoenix ever since Christopher Nolan started with Batman. And think about this. So the burning bat, and you can find Nolan and his brother Jonathan Nolan doing Fallout, but you can find pictures of them with the Batman burning sculpture. And this is before he was involved with this Oppenheimer and the nuke thing. But also, this is before COVID. And what set off the reset? The bat soup. The bat soup was a prop because we're connecting it to this movie, and the bat again is this burning bat is used to represent in this Batman movie. You see it as like this recurring theme. The bat behind Batman in the movie posters, the holes in the buildings shaped like bats. Like, what is this? Here's another example. Dark Knight Rises. And rises. Okay, so Dark Knight Rises. You just break that simple thing apart. And we're talking about rising from the dead, presumably. Rising from the ashes. Reoccurring themes. And again, Christopher Nolan's younger brother is doing Fallout, which I'm hoping to watch it before they actually pull off a fake nuke. I don't want to have to watch it while we're locked down. Otherwise, the predictive programming is a little too late. And something else too, in Dark Knight Rises, there's a scene that foreshadows not just the mushroom cloud, but the masks of 2020. Like there's, sort of like with Kubrick. We examine his films, and you're like, oh wow, The Shining predicts or shows that he did Apollo 11. Well, it also predicted 9/11, but you couldn't have known that until after 9/11. Similarly, you wouldn't have known until after 2020 that the film had references to 2020. And so with Christopher Nolan's work, looking back in retrospect, you're like, look, he has predictive programming for the mushroom cloud, and this is before he ever got picked to do Oppenheimer. Anyway, metascriptors. And this is an important point here. The fact that we're noticing and paying attention to who writes the scripts, we can point to figures. This isn't AI. It's not the demiurge. It's not synchro mysticism. We can find the propagandists, the artists who have been co-opted to serve the psyop entertainment complex. And you'll see how throughout the years their movies, in fact, form a backdrop, a frame of reference, and contain a lot of predictions for the future. Why is that? Well, it's because they write the news in advance and everything confirms it. Everything leads to it. All right, let's see here. Going on your comments. Joined by Eric Stevens, P. Trippa, Frank Murr, Skyfish, Dawn Patrol. Yeah, my original concept here with the deprogram was IPS morning deprogram, evening open phones. Because when I open phones, I'll spend 2 hours arguing somebody over chemtrail born nanobots. And then I miss all the notes. So I thought, maybe it'd make more sense to go over the critical information in the mornings, and in the evenings we can react and build on it. So I had some notes here. We talked about Ryan Garcia's failed prediction. Uh, okay, here's a prediction. Talking about predictive programming. Leave the World Behind preceded all these incidents with Boeing. So everybody knows Boeing is cursed. Boeing planes are just falling to pieces. And some are blaming DEI, which has nothing to do with it, but that's the right wing talking point. Um, I think the left is probably going to blame climate change or deregulation and Trump. But whatever the case, ever since, ever since this Boeing thing has been reoccurring, I've been like, watch, this Boeing Starliner is going to have an issue. And so we're looking at it as a potential disaster. Well, it turns out that the Boeing Starliner launch, which was delayed again and again and again, it finally launches. I mean, we're talking last minute they pull it, so like something is up. And they had trouble docking. They had issues. And it's like we predicted it. I mean, there were people in the chat who were watching this thing who were, I mean, normies who were like, yeah, the Boeing Starliner is going to bump into the IPS. I mean, into the ISS. It's going to, like, people were actually kind of like looking at this like the way we were. And why? Why are normies looking at the Boeing Starliner as a potential disaster the way that auto hoaxers are? It's because they've been conditioned. And all we're doing is we're reading their conditioning. So the normies are going to be prepared for some disaster with this. Now, there wasn't a disaster, not yet anyway. But the fact is, and as I went through the Gilded, there's a lot of hints and clues, a lot of numbers, very significant numbers. And part of my basis for predicting the ISS falling is the consistent refrain of 119. Like the number 119, Genesis 11:9, the fall of the Tower of Babel is a reoccurring theme. And on January 19th, the ISS movie came out. And what was this about? Russia and America go to war on the Earth. And in the space station, they have to fight over who's going to control the space station. So the Russians and the Americans are the astronauts are killing each other. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because didn't America just provoke Putin? You see these escalating tensions, but it mirrors the movie. So it's not like life follows or life imitates art or art imitates a lot. This whole thing is like which precedes what? Well, no, we live in a news bent reality. And we talked about news benders the other night. The idea of this 30-minute theater suggesting that life is in fact being steered by those who control the media who are writing our history. But it's art imitates psyops. And the media will reinforce the psyops. They will do documentaries of fake events. This is just, it's the immersive illusion of it all. And you look at the Mandela effect. Okay, so this is why I like talking about these things and why it's relevant. A lot of the people who are Mandela affected or who feel bad for the Mandela affected are like, leave the Mandela affected alone. Haven't you hurt them enough? You've taken away their religion. And it's like, no, because there's a methodology to the deception we need to understand. What happens is you're given a false choice. Like if reality's shifting, there should be 50 versions of everything, but there aren't. It's not like that. Every Mandela effect is a binary. But the trick of it is this, and this is why it's relevant. They show you a label that you know, a logo you know, and they say it used to be this. Do you remember? Well, when they ask you this question, it's actually called retroactive interference. This is well understood by interrogators because when you ask them if they remember this alternate version, their imagination actually is prompted into creating it. That's what we mean by false memory. Mandela affected claim that there's no such thing as a false memory. Yeah, there is. Because once this is prompted, now, depending on your cognitive bias or your level of awareness about how this can happen, you may actually have these two simultaneous images in your head now being weighed equally. And now it's just a matter of which one do I choose? Am I going to be a zombie who's not Mandela, who doesn't have the Mandela effect, or am I going to be awake and I see the changes? So people will go with it, but it's prompted. Similarly, the mass media will create a lot of images and narratives and stories through the movies so that now in your frame of reference you have what are tantamount to false memories waiting to be recalled. Like when 9/11 happened, people were like, it's like the movie Independence Day. When people reference leave the world behind, like their phone, the AT&T went down, there's like phone blackouts, just like the movie. Well, they're saying just like the movie because it's in their frame of reference. But here's the key. The thing that they're referencing from the movie is totally fake. Aliens knocking down buildings is fake. Why is that in their frame of reference? You see, they use the movies to expand the realm of possibility, to insert hyperstitions, fakery, to make the fake real. And this is exactly what the Mendoza effect does. What they're doing again is just basically prompting recollections. They're gaslighting you, truly gaslighting you, getting you to replace your lived and experienced perceptions for a recollection or something that you saw on a screen. Okay, continuing here. Travis Cloud says final scene of the show Fallout for the first season is Seattle, and then it ends the show. Okay, I was waiting for confirmation. It is hugely significant that Fallout would end in Seattle. Westworld ends, and it was just all about space needles. Weirdly enough, Upside Down Guy says, does Godzilla equal 34? Asking due to the big movie Godzilla -1. Well, Godzilla versus King Kong is stored in that movie. They store him at sub-level 33. The numerology with Godzilla is intriguing. I think it's really interesting that Godzilla -1 was released on his 69th birthday, and Godzilla was born. Anybody care to guess Godzilla's birthday? This is just too perfect. We often talk about the symbol of the Kraken and the numbers associated with it, and why these numbers are reinforcing the same theme. And so, for example, November the 3rd, I've called the Kraken Day for a lot of reasons. A lot of it has to do with the election and Trump. Well, interestingly, the One World Trade Tower opened on 11/3. So 9/11, the towers go down. 11/3, the new one is opened, which is interesting for a few reasons. The 3/11, 9/11, 11/3, 119. Interesting how these are always related. But Godzilla was born on November the 3rd. Another thing to reinforce this. But this was his 69th birthday. Well, 69, when you look at the symbols in astrology, would give you the symbol of Cancer, the crab, the original Kraken. It's where the Kraken word derives from, crab, the big giant crab myth, and in its original form. And so, interestingly, last June, in fact, as we entered the summer solstice, which is the crab, the submersible Titan went down to the Titanic where it imploded. So the significance here is the Titan in the abyss. You see, the Titanic, the wreckage there where they were visiting, was visited by James Cameron filming Ghosts in the Abyss. And James Cameron went down there 33 times, sub level 33. He goes down there 33 times in the Challenger, the deep sea Challenger. So the story here then, again, is the Twin Towers and the Titanic. These are analogous symbols for the sunken West. What sinks the West? The Challenger, the Kraken, Godzilla, the Destroyer, Apollyon, Abaddon, Trump. These are all reoccurring themes. But Revelation 9:11 specifies this beast reigning over the abyss. So Ghosts in the Abyss, Sunken Titanic, Challenger, all correlates specifically to November the 3rd, America being challenged, our electoral system, and then of course the One World Tower 11:3, which is the Tower of Babel, and then of course the significance of the Kraken and Godzilla being the nuke. Godzilla is literally a metaphor for the nuke. So tying this all together, what we do get is this pretty succinct picture about the meaning of Godzilla, why it came out this year, and how it ties into the ritual last solstice with the sunken submersible. Again, the Titan submersible is going to be repeated this year. There's another billionaire who's going down soon. Okay, continuing. Final scene in Fallout is Seattle. That's something else I had to point out. Seattle. Okay, so Seattle is the center of something of a prophecy. In fact, in 4 days, and this is way more credible than Ryan Garcia, who's just shooting from. He's just shooting at the mouth. He's just spewing whatever he's told to say. But there is a very well articulated examination of predictive programming that does point to Seattle getting nuked, and that's why this is not inconsistent with anything we've seen. And for Westworld to end with a Seattle-like situation with these space needles, we're talking Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, the Nolan brothers. Then Nolan brother does this Oppenheimer film, which, by the way, the film was 11 miles long and weighed 600 pounds. Another 11.6 attached to this nuke narrative. And then his brother doing Fallout ending in Seattle. Very significant. Okay, Tom Inouye says, Rust shooting. Responsible for overseeing all weapons on set for specified days was the production property's key assistant and armorer, Hannah Reed. She had the crow tattoo. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, Hannah Reed also had a tattoo of talking about red flags. She had a tattoo of a black widow on her abdomen. So if you're not familiar with this, this was the person who handed the 44 to Alec Baldwin. Now there's a few little side stories here. I looked deeply into this story. Okay, here she is showing off her crow tattoo on her left shoulder. So there's this gothiness to her. She was wearing this sinner saint, or I think sinner saint shirt, and it had like a devil on it. She has all this imagery around her. It's pretty obvious. But the Black Widow tattoo on her stomach really stood out to me. And after the movie set was taken down, one of the crew members was bitten on the arm by a spider, and they were going to have to amputate the arm. So I'm like, wait, Rust movie, spider bite. Here it is. Rust crew member who suffered a spider bite may lose his arm. I'm like, okay, so the arms girl, the arms person on the set, hands him a gun, and he kills somebody. They close down the set, and of course, she has the tattoo of the spider on her stomach. And then some guy gets bitten by a spider and loses his arm practically. So that's what I'm saying. It's just kind of like, that seems like there's a subtext here. And there's a little more to it as well. There's something else about this too. Let's see, Rust armorer Hannah wants to be released from prison while waiting for an appeal. She was found guilty of manslaughter. I happen to think that I won't say I believe this, but there is this interesting narrative that would kind of connect Alec Baldwin's ex-wife to this, and that maybe this was a setup. I kind of looked into this. If you don't remember this whole story, we'll have to revisit it because there's a few little intricacies to it. Because I think it's in Wayne's World. In Wayne's World, there's a scene where Garth is kind of prompted to take out some lady's husband. I'm not sure if any of you remember this. So Alec Baldwin's ex-wife, Kim Basinger, she's in this movie. She has this kind of a scene where she's indicating she wants her husband killed. Garth doesn't want to do it. Well, Kim Basinger, was it Kim Basinger? Or, I don't know if it was. I think it was her. She was seen dancing after the Rush shooting at a goth club. I'm like, well, that's weird. Kim Basinger, first sighting since her husband did the shooting, and I thought, why would she be dancing at a nightclub, at a goth club, after her husband's traumatic event? So I kind of thought maybe she was grave dancing. Maybe it was a celebration. And my connection here is this: Hannah. Hannah is completely gothic, covered in tattoos. The spider, the raven, is from Edgar Allan Poe. Doesn't get gothier than that. So I'm like, maybe this was a hit. I'm just sort of conspiracy theorizing, but the trail's there. All right, let's continue here. Upside Down Guy says Rust and Crow films both had tragic shootings during filming. Yeah, that's the connection we're getting here. And there's more too. I mean, Hannah Reid, I'm not Hannah, Helena Hutchins, who was 42, was from the place in Ukraine where Hunt for Red October takes place. And who was in Hunt for Red October? Alec Baldwin. So you have that link as well. The Russian submarine is also a factor right now. I would also point out that the Rust shooting takes place in a chapel that looks like the Westworld Chapel. That looked like the chapel that Ye burned on 2/2/2022. And the reoccurring symbol of the chapel, I think, represents the West. Like MLK said, the West is a burning house, or America's a burning house. He said he was afraid he was sending people back into the burning house. And this reference to the burning house by MLK was also referenced by Ye. Now, the significance here is Ye's name, because the house represented his past. So it was Kanye West, the West burning, West's world burning, as the Westworld series comes to an end and was burning, as Game of Thrones comes to an end and Westeros is burning. So Westworld, Westeros, the Rust movie set, Western, all these things are constantly reiterating this theme of the West being destroyed. This is why I think it's highly significant that Baldwin shot the guy with Trump's birthday, because this directly correlates, again, 614, to Don't Look Up, about the Earth being hit by a meteor. Upside Down Guy says the final scene is New Vegas, the Stratosphere Casino, not Seattle. Well, Vegas-y, New Vegas, the main thing is this. The symbol is the Space Needle, which I think in a way correlates with the mushroom cloud, the shape of it. I'm not the first one to point this out, but there's a tremendous amount of significance to it. I mean, think about the significance of Seattle to the pandemic, ground zero, and the Space Needle there. Well, what does the Space Needle represent? Yeah, one, it's an obelisk. It's a Tower of Babel. It's a tower to space, which is the new heaven. The Tower of Babel goes into the heavens, and the Space Needle is designed to be a UFO. It's consciously designed to be the vehicle that the new Aeon angels, the aliens, use to go to heaven. So it's symbolic of the Tower of Babel, of course, the obelisk, the transcendence. So the needle itself, the Space Needle, and the Vax Needle have a great deal of significance when you begin to look at how space is a metaphor for our commons, our minds, our worldview, and they need to get all the contaminants, the viruses, the mind viruses, and the mind junk out of our shared worldview. So there's a great deal of symbolism that goes into the Space Needle as we get into this conflating of our mind and the heavens, inner space and outer space. It's all theater when you get down to it. And these monuments are highly significant. I mean, think about what I was just saying about the One World Trade Tower. The fact that it's 1,776 feet high. Yeah, that's not a reference to America 1776 AD. It's a reference to 1776 AL on the Masonic calendar and the Masonic lore about the Tower of Babel's construction beginning 1776 AL. Now, the significance of its opening date on 11/3, the Kraken, all has to do again with the Tower of Babel, the West, and its eventual takedown by the Kraken. And we're getting close. I think we're getting close to a culmination here. David Hazel said the CGI in the new Godzilla reminded me of Game of Thrones. So I've seen Godzilla minus one, which is interesting in itself. I mean, it is, I think, the counterpart to Barbie feminism. And I'll explain briefly. Barbie feminism was the destruction of the nuclear family. Barbie teaches the girls to take their baby dolls and bash the heads against the rocks and become independent. Ken is superfluous. Men are superfluous. And the whole point of the movie, of course, is that the Ken dolls remain dolls with nubs, the Kenification of the American male. And Barbie, of course, is now Barbie feminism, becomes a real woman. But this was the introduction of the Whore of Babylon, the splitting of the nuclear family. And the Barbie-Heimer meme is interesting because Barbie comes out at the same time as Oppenheimer. Because Barbie's Babylon, the bomb is the beast. Oppenheimer represents the beast. Godzilla, the nuke, the beast. So Barbie and Godzilla, Barbie-Heimer, Barbiezilla. These things are intentionally put out there, at the same time. So in the Barbie movie, it's about the destruction of the nuclear family, the rise of Barbie feminism. The Godzilla minus one is about Godzilla as this threat that brings everyone together to bring the nuclear family back together. The protagonist meets a woman, they find a stray child, they create a family, all their friends support it. So they're rebuilding the nuclear family and sacrificing their own personal interests, self-sacrifice for the nation, for the future. So that you had the complete opposite. One of them is selfishness and sacrificing the children to have a selfish future, Barbie. And the other one is self sacrifice, build back the family. It's all strong males who defeat Godzilla. And it's basically a refutation. In fact, I would say Godzilla is a right wing culture warrior. But they made this dialectic on purpose. They designed it this way. No coincidences. And it's not a coincidence that on Godzilla versus King Kong, which I haven't seen yet, that his spikes turn pink. What's the pink? It has to do with Barbie. And I'll have to watch that before I comment too much more on it. But the thing of it is, when Maui happened, I said, look, this mysterious blaze happens in Maui. Some say energy weapons. I'm like, this is tying into Godzilla. The islands, Godzilla, Bikini Islands. And strangely enough, after the fires in Maui, they had to spray a soil tackifier to prevent it from running into the ocean. All the damaged soil and the contaminants and everything else. Well, the soil tackifier is pink. So the pink beach after the Godzilla attack, this consistent correlation between the beast and pink. So this kind of gets together a little further when we're looking at the pink sky, the pink background of the King Charles painting. Like, what is the significance of this pink in this big picture? One other thing I want to note here, in the Godzilla vs. King Kong, it's New Empire, like New EMP. Just like the new Godzilla movie. I'm sorry, the new Ghostbusters movie is Frozen Empire. So what happens after a nuclear blast? You get the nuclear winter. And this kind of ties back again to Game of Thrones, where it's like winter is coming. Well, what is the winter at the end of the movie? When the dragons are burning down Westeros, you have the snow starting to fall. The winter has finally arrived. So like, okay, wait. It looks like ashes raining from the sky with the snow. Nuclear winter. Let me catch up on some comments. Fig says the beast of revelation has to do with time and space. Joined by thirst for truth. They lie, we see. Tomanoid3 says the other connection was a victim being born in Minsk, same place as Red October sub base. Okay, Helena Hutchins, born there, HH88, another Trumpian reference. Although in Canada, after those truckers, they were saying honk honk is actually HH, or Hail Hitler. Anyway, Helena Hutchins, connected to Hunt for Red October. Tom Clancy. Now, Tom Clancy, Sum of All Fears, 9/11. Tom Clancy is widely credited with having being a lot of his work represented in future major world events. It happens to be the case that on 9/11, the space station had Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears playing on the audiobook. Like they had the audiobook of Sum of All Fears when 9/11 happened. And I'm like, that's interesting. They even commented on it. One of the only astronaut on board at the time was like saying, we were listening to Sum of All Fears and we were watching and we saw 9/11 happen from space and it was just like that. The time Tom Clancy was paid to speak at CIA headquarters. There's quite a lot about Tom Clancy we could talk about here. It's been commented on quite a lot about his work and the predictive programming in it. We talk about metascripters all the time. For example, the Nolans. And you may not know until years later how many different things their books were conditioning us for. Tom Clancy's powerful foresight into a post 9/11 world. This is so pervasive, by the way, predictive programming. You can't say it's eerie coincidence. You can't say it's synchromysticism because every instance of predictive programming has direct political utility. For example, even Francis Ford Coppola's latest movie, Megapolis, written before 9/11, had an entire chapter taken out because it predicted 9/11. And, he didn't know, I don't think, maybe he's so insulated, but that this particular concept he was given to put into his movie was going to be used in a terror event. I happen to think that most of these metascriptors are compartmentalized and may not know the full import of it, but some of them, especially if they're involved in space fakery or nuke fakery, the Nolans, they have to be very well aware. Okay, I have a image of the final scene in Fallout Season 1. And, okay, so you have at the very background a space needle, and it looks like a devastating scene. Thank you for that, Travis. Again, this is predictable stuff. We were saturated with 9/11 decades before it happened. We were prepared for it subconsciously. Well, our collective psyche has been prepared for this happening to Seattle. And maybe in 4 days. I don't have my fingers crossed. I don't have any real attachment to it happening on that date. However, the date 6/11 is positively correlated with the destruction of Seattle by nuke, the number 6/11 or 11/6, specifically by domestic terrorists. And I was looking at this before I came across JL's work when I was noticing the patterning. 9/11 external terrorist, 6/11 internal threat. 9/11 33-year-old Mohammed Atta attacks the Twin Towers, lead hijacker. 90 days before, on 6/11, 33-year-old Timothy McVeigh gets executed. Well, 33-year-old Mohammed Atta, 33-year-old Timothy McVeigh, 6/11, 9/11. There's a connection here. Now, McVeigh did the Oklahoma City bombing, was inspired by the Turner Diaries, written by a man born on 9/11, 1933. And the Turner Diaries predict not only 9/11 like attacks, but a future white nationalist nuke attack. That's the Turner Diaries. That's why Charlie Kirk's organization that gathers all the right wing extremists is called Turning Point USA. Turning Point, Turner Diaries. What's the connection? The turning point is when the Patriots realize we have to appeal to heaven, we have to get violent. They've been building this for a long time. McVeigh was radicalized at Waco alongside Alex Jones. Now think about this, Waco raided over 1.6 million rounds. 1.6? That's way before January 6th. Waco, 33-year-old Burning Man Dave Koresh, they believed he was Jesus. Waco's where Donald Trump kicked off his campaign a day after Netflix releases Waco American Apocalypse. So Waco American Apocalypse in the trailer says 1.6 million rounds. Then you have Trump kicking off his campaign in Waco the next day, and he calls it the final battle. And at this time, Dominion, the voting booth company, is suing Fox over the election fraud claims for 1.6 billion rounds. I mean, the 1.6 thing is so consistent. Check this out. The Netflix series Inside Job, which is a 9/11 reference. Season 1, Episode 6. Well, who was at January 6th but Alex Jones? So interestingly, Inside Job is named for an Alex Jones phrase, and they make fun of Alex Jones in it. But Season 1, Episode 6 actually has a Kraken. And again, January 6th is all tied into this Kraken narrative. And Alex Jones, who was radicalized at Waco, 1.6 million rounds, he went on Piers Morgan and he threatened to unleash 1776 if they try to take the guns again. Well, they trying to take the guns again equals the turning point. So when he said 1776 will commence again, that's Alex Jones, it was in response to the DHS purchasing 1.6 billion hollow point rounds. Here again, 1.6 billion bullet number, problematizing gun control. So here's Alex Jones spouting 1.6. He was radicalized over the 1.6 rounds. He goes out there on 1.6. It is just a steady drumbeat. There's no surprises here. Okay, let me go through your comments. Okay, here we go. Baldwin, Hunt for Red October. Okay, we talked about that already. And again, Tom Clancy, that's huge. Upside Down Guy says Hunter Biden will be innocent in a pathetic attempt to incite the right. You know, the right wants to get Hunter on gun charges. And it's like, what about inalienable rights? I thought gun rights came from God. I thought you were born with the right to bear arms, and that the government isn't granting you a privilege, but it's a God-given right, and it shall not be infringed. You know, you're born with the legal right to own a cannon and an AR-15. Like, there's no infringement on. Like, I hear these arguments all the time, and yet when illegal aliens are allowed to own guns, they're like, no, you can't own guns. You're not a real citizen. I'm like, wait a minute here. Which side of this are you on? Inalienable rights or government privilege? So I consistently see these hypocrites exposing themselves, and so they should be fine with Hunter Biden carrying a gun, but they're like, nope, he had a gun at some point in the past when he shouldn't have, so we want to drag him to court. And I really do hope that the judge, in the case of Hunter Biden versus Garrett Ziegler, rules that a hard drive can be considered a computer for the purposes of the computer fraud and hacking charges that they're trying to level. Yeah, weirdly, I am on Team Biden when it comes to these lawsuits. Fig says the burning house is the temple of Apollo's house, now in Cern, Switzerland. Seattle is linked to it. Interesting. Okay, another Seattle connection. You have a place called, I think it's called Hawkland or Hawkville in Stranger Things. And so I think, Seattle Seahawks, it's Hawkins, which I think represents Seattle. But, I was talking about the end of Westworld. You've got Westeros burning. You got the Westworld burning at the end of Westworld. It looks like Seattle. You have these space needle symbols. In fact, if you look at the Westworld season 4, I believe on the cover it even has a skull, and on the skull's cover, on its eye socket. Here we go. You'll see on the inside of it, it has this interesting Space Needle symbol. And then season 3 has the android, looks like he's impaled on the One World Trade Tower. But anyway, I want to just point out here, because we're talking about the symbol of the West and the West world burning, Westeros burning. And again, the idea of the burning house. Kanye West's burning house on 2/2/2022, and he referenced MLK's burning house being the West. It's not fixable. You have to just burn it down and start all over again. Well, the reason why that is significant is 2/2/2022 is the date that Pluto returned to the point where it was when America was born in 1776. So 1776 did commence again. It did come back on 2/2/2022. Again, the symbol of the burning house is associated with this. So in Stranger Things, Hawkins has an earthquake that splits it open, and hellfire rains down like ashes, like fallout, just like you had in Westeros, the fallout with the snow. And in Hawkins, it was a 7.4 magnitude earthquake that split it open. Interestingly, because this is again the same time Stranger Things comes out, Seattle is doing drills for a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. So I'm like, wait, 7.4 in the TV show about Hawkins, but in reality, they're doing a 7.5 earthquake drill in Seattle. And they said that if you had a 7.5 magnitude earthquake outside of Seattle, you would have 42-foot waves. So the study was focused on the Seattle Fault beneath the Puget Sound and the city of Seattle. And they said that if it's hit with a 7.5, you'll get a 42-foot wave. The impact of a 7.5 magnitude earthquake, according to the Washington State Department of National Resources, would be a 42-foot wave. So the connection here, earthquake, Hawkins, 7.4, earthquake Sims, Seattle, 7.5. Same thing. They should have just gone with 7.4. But this has been a reoccurring theme, is my point. And then, of course, Seattle is out there in the northwest. Upside Down Guy says, nukes are tested in Nevada. We're pre-programmed to link Nevada and nukes. No, well, they are, but maybe they'll nuke Nevada, not Seattle. There's no indication of anything but Seattle. Everything points to Seattle. I mentioned 42-foot waves, Washington State 42, Space Needle, 42-second ride to the top, 42 meters wide. The 42 is a way of representing Saturn, the destroyer, the Terminator. So no, there's no deviation in these scripts. People are always like, well, maybe they're not going to get Trump. Maybe they're just going to humiliate him. No, they're going to shoot him in the head. I'm sorry, but they're going to simulate a JFK-like scene. They're going to Biff Tannen him, and then he's going to come back from the dead. Like the predictive programming is predictive. So look, if you're in Seattle in 4 days, we're going to see this reach some kind of a culmination. Tom103 says, -1 has a few parallels to Jaws. A fishing boat chase. Smile, you son of a bitch scene. Okay, you know what? You are right about that. And this is intriguing. So if there are connections and the nuke stuff, okay. If there's connections to Jaws and Godzilla, then it fits, because when the Titan submersible was going down, and this was in 2023, a lot of people had noticed that the thing looked like a great white shark. In fact, here's the image of it. It looks like Jaws, the shape of it. And people are also looking at here we go. I think it was last year, Jaws I think it had its 48th anniversary. So it was kind of in the news. Yeah, 48 years. So Jaws was in the news. It's another Beast from the Sea reference. But we were talking about this last year. For some reason, it was in the news. I'll probably have to dig back through my notes. That's why I'm playing archives again. T-Dog135 says, for Happy Hide It. Yeah, TGIF. Thirst for Truth, appreciate the support. Super chat, putting gas in the think tank. And Fig says Napoleon, Emperor Napoleon, linked to the second beast. Okay, let me mention this too. So Revelation 9:11 has a number of names referring to the beast in the abyss that I contend is the nuke, and that the sunken Titanic represents the sunken Twin Towers, represents the sunken West, and I think it's going to continue to build this narrative: Titanic, Twin Towers, space station, the Tower of Babel, too big to fail. These emblems of man's hubris being taken down. I think that's kind of the story, but in the abyss in Revelation 9:11, it talks about Apollyon, which is Hebrew's Abaddon, which I contend links to Abaddon, Donald Trump. Apollyon, Apollo, and then of course that translates to exterminator, which is a Terminator connection. And of course, Terminator, James Cameron, famous scene, the nuking of the West Coast. So, what's more, there is this notion that Apollyon didn't exist. Sorry, Napoleon didn't exist, but that Napoleon is actually a sun god myth. And this is not a new one. This is like a meta script breakdown that is not new at all. What if Napoleon never existed is not a new conspiracy theory. He is a personification of the sun, and we can prove this by showing how everything Napoleon has been. Here we go. This is from game.blog. I've gone through this before, and I find it to be intriguing because I've been saying for some time that Trump is a Christ typology. Like, why are they associating Trump with Christ? Why are they associating with the Antichrist in various predictive programming references? What is this? Well, it's because he's a world stage character. He's playing a role. I say we're in a news bent reality. If they're writing the news in advance, they still have to play it out like a reality TV show. They have to act it out. So you have an actor. We're living in season 35 of The Apprentice, I think. So actor Donald Trump is fulfilling a role. He's a historic personage. He's a real person. He lives, he breathes. But the character Donald Trump is a hoax, in the same way that Napoleon was a hoax. So here's a couple of there's an essay about this, and again, this is not new. The suggestion here is that he's a personification of the sun. We have a few examples here. Prevailed in the south, defeated in the north, reign of 12 years. Okay, it's all in symbolism. So first of all, sun equals Apollo. Apollo means exterminator, and the name was given by the Greeks to the sun on the account of the injury it did before Troy. So there you have Apollo and exterminator, which is again the Terminator T2. And T2, T is a cross, like the 4, 4-2, 4-2, T2, Saturn, very much consistent. Judgment Day, second coming. This is why two T's, two 4s, two X's all signify second coming. On 4-4, 2023, Trump was arraigned, and that was the 44th birthday of Heath Ledger. And at this time that he was in the court, they were filming Joker 2 outside. So second coming, Joker 2. Heath Ledger been replaced by a guy named Phoenix, second coming symbolism. And Joaquin Phoenix is often portrayed as a Christ archetype in all of his movies. It's pretty consistent. So my point of it here, again, this all reiterates what we've been saying. Continuing, the 4 seasons. Napoleon had 4 brothers that represent the 4 seasons. I believe he had the 12 marshals underneath him, were the 12 signs of the zodiac. He followed the course of the sun. The leader of so many brilliant armies overran in triumph the countries of the south, but having penetrated too far north, he was unable to maintain himself. These details precisely apply to the sun's course. So the essay explains how you could look at Napoleon as a personification story, the sun's journey, which I think makes perfect sense. And this has been attached, of course, to the Gospels, to Christ, to Titus Flavius, through Joseph Atwill, which, whatever you think about the origin of the story of Christ or the Sun King idea, the notion of personification is not new. And so this is not new. And I'm just saying it would be very consistent. And then Trump is heavily associated with Apollo. I think we've all seen Donald Trump's. I mean, first of all, he's got golden buildings, but the in one of his golden buildings, he has like an Apollo shrine, basically. I think I have a picture of it here. And by the way, Devil's Advocate had a penthouse where the devil was staying, and it was Trump's penthouse. But yeah, here you have inside Donald Trump's Apollo room. Anyway, let's continue. Great comments by everyone here. And the new Joker movie comes out on 10/4, by the way, about a month before the election on 11/5. Robert Sturek says Fallout New Vegas has a lot of Elvis references. Fascinating. Okay, good to know. There's a gang of the Kings that dress like him. Okay, I'm going to have to let JL26 know, so I'm going to highlight this comment. We'll address this later. Because you cannot disassociate Elvis, King County, the Space Needle, the number 42, which is the age he died, from any of this stuff. It's all connected. And Elvis, as JL26 had remarked, he's the beast of the sea. He's another reference. He's another one of these archetypes. He's a personage. This is an icon. I mean, in a way, this is just idol worship. These are the new gods. And there's a reason, though. There's a reason why they would have Elvis's archetype in there. So this is getting very interesting. This is why I look into JL's work, because it's fact-based, it's observation-based, and he's picking up on very significant narrative threads. Robert Sturek says they actually kind of worship him. Dan says Fallout 1, 2 were old school turn-based games, and Vault 33. Yeah, I watched this Fallout episode 1, and a character named Lucy, which is light, goes to the surface, and it's a big door that opens, and it's a portal to the light she's never seen. So she goes through the light, and there's a big 33 on her vest, and it's a 33 in the vault behind her. Like, what is all this? Well, 33 is always associated with light and ascension, like or fire, the Burning Man, Kundalini. But it's always ascension, transcendence. Whereas 42 is the opposite. It's descent, gravity, falling, darkness, death. So life, conception, and ascension, falling, death, and you could even say restriction, confinement, incarnation, the material world. So light and darkness, 33, 42. This is how it's represented on the world stage. 33 in the sun, which is why Christ transcends at 33. And then the 42 is heavily associated with the space program, from Elon Musk to Jeff Bezos to a lot of the subtext and scripts within. And, there's something else too. The number 42 associated with blackouts, which would be associated with nukes. In July of 1977, July 13th, 1977, which is 113 days before 11/3, side note. But on July 13th, 1977, you had a blackout in Manhattan. This is during the Son of Sam shootings. But it was a blackout from 42nd Street on. And 42 years later to the day, and this is in 2019, you had a Manhattan blackout. And it went from 42nd Street on. And it was remarked upon by the media that this Manhattan blackout was exactly like the previous one. Now, the failure affected 73,000 customers. Originally, it's 42,000. But anyway, the point of it is this. The blackout happened on the 42nd anniversary of the 1977 power outage that plunged the city into darkness and chaos. So you see this, 42, darkness, chaos. And I can find many, many examples of this. New York City power outage darkens Times Square, disrupts traffic, 7/13, 2019. I'm just bringing this up as an example, but you'll often find the number 42, again, correlated with Saturn, falling, black, darkness. And this is why in the race war psyops, you see an overwhelming use of the numbers 33 and 42. Like Derek Chauvin was only allowed to have 33. Well, there were 33 people in the courtroom when Chauvin was on trial. I'll just give you an example. 333 days after the killing on 4/2, on 4/20, he's convicted. Derek Chauvin trial, up to 33 people allowed in. Like, what is that? Now, Chauvin's wife was arrested for a bad check shortly after this event. The wife of Derek Chauvin was writing a bad check, $42. Then you had the twin of George Floyd, Stephen Jackson, 42. Floyd's drug dealer, I think his name was Maurice Hall, was 42 years old. The guy who was, yeah, Maurice Hall, 42, was the one who was driving the van. And I can go on and on with the 42s and these race war psyops. It's super consistent. And how many times in the head, or how many times was Rodney King? I think the name King and 33 are always associated. Rodney King was hit 33 times. Rosa Parks was 42 when she refused to give up her seat. Now, the Rodney King thing, this is intriguing. So the name King, 33. The riots. You had Reginald Denny. Reggie is king. All kinds of king stuff with this. But James Cameron recently talked about this, how he was filming Terminator 2. And by the way, Rodney King was beaten for 1 minute and 19 seconds. But check this out. Terminator 2 Judgment Day was filmed across the street from where Rodney King was beaten. But not only that, but while they were shooting, look at this, Rodney King was beaten on the same night that they were filming. So James Cameron just happened to be there filming when this happened. So I think James Cameron should be credited with the beating of Rodney King. Who shot JFK? It wasn't Oswald. It was Stanley Kubrick. Who was behind the beating of Rodney King? James Cameron. Tom Clancy, 9/11 does. We have to get into the meta scriptures here. But this is deep, and Cameron's deep. He's on 9/11. He's at the scene of the Titanic. The 119 code ties into this pretty heavily as well. I mean, this is incredibly coincidental. This is synchromysticism. Man couldn't have planned this. The demiurge must have used some AI to make this happen. No, sorry, synchromystics. This is how they bend our history, by writing our news in advance, and we can find out who wrote the news. And guess what? It's not the demiurge. It's James Cameron. It's Stanley Kubrick. It's Jonathan Nolan. It's Christopher Nolan. It's a lot more mundane than just having this convenient argument of, oh, God did it. Fig says, I uploaded a video regarding the links between the Tower of Babel, Napoleon, BlackRock, and XO. They're all linked. Okay, please send me a link to that. Please send me a link. Here's a fascinating one. You say BlackRock. 1986 to 2019, you had 33 consecutive Burning Man festivals. They had to stop it in 2020 because of COVID. So you had 33 Burning Man festivals, 86 to 2019. Well, in 86, there was a man who burned himself in front of the White House. In 2019, there was a 33-year-old man who burned himself in front of the White House. These two Burning Men. Now, the second one was 33. The first one was probably 33. The second one had a USA shirt. So he's burning. Anyway, two Burning Men, 33 years apart. And I'm like, wait a minute here. These are the bookend years that start and finish have the 33 Burning Man festivals. And those take place in Black Rock City. So you have Black Rock City, Burning Man festivals, and at the final Burning Man festival in this 33-year consecutive sequence in 2019, a 33-year-old died. A 33-year-old man died at Burning Man in the Black Rock Desert. So 33rd Burning Man, 33-year-old dies. There's a lot more to it. My point of it is BlackRock, Burning Man, 33. Now, interestingly, there is reputed to be, if you trust Mercator and John D, there at the center of the North Pole is the Black Rock, a phantom island believed to be a black rock located at the magnetic North Pole. And according to Mercator describing it to John D, it is 33 French miles in size. So another 33 black rock connection at the center of this. And then in 87, you had the Black Monday market crash. In 2020, on 3/16, after they declared a pandemic, we had a Black Monday market crash. So I'm thinking, wait, Saturday, Saturn, Friday, Venus, Thursday, Jupiter, Wednesday, Mercury, Tuesday, Mars, Monday, Moon, Sunday, Sun. So Black Monday made me think, okay, wait, if we're looking at it from the perspective of their symbolism here, uh, a Black Monday market crash, it almost seems like it could be a almost like a Black Rock reference, but the connection here though, Black Monday, Black Rock, the financial systems were being impacted that day. In fact, on 3/16, the Dow Jones Industrial fell 2997, almost 3,000 points, which is a very 9/11y number. But my point of it here is the connection with BlackRock and these two Black Monday market crashes 33 years apart. The Burning Man festivals in BlackRock. There's quite a lot here. But yeah, please send me a link to that video. I want to watch that and then we'll continue this conversation. Okay, continuing. Dan says, born next to an AR-15, which becomes yours the moment you're old enough to hold it. Yeah, unless you're a Democrat or an illegal immigrant. Then you don't have God-given rights to own guns. Lean Dion says, Season 3 Westworld foreshadowed the 2020 riots, with cities burning in a revolution. Right, right, good call. And, of course, Ground Zero, Seattle 311. When you look at the Season 3 Westworld artwork and imagery, here's an example. This does look like the One World Trade Tower. Now, the One World Trade Tower opened on 11/3, but the inverse of it, 3/11, and it's a big syringe. So you have this individual who looks like he's impaled on a big syringe on this new movie poster. So I looked at these posters closely, and free will is not free, Westworld, and what I did find here is I did find references to 311. Like here's a pretty interesting one. Look at the Westworld logo. It's a W and has two bars on the outside of the W to make another W. Or if you turn that sideways, it's a 3 and then an 11. You can find a lot of 311s encoded into this. But the One World Trade Tower 1776, 11/3, 311, impaled, too perfect. But the 311 references here pre-existed 311 being declared as the pandemic date. Yeah, Westworld is fantastic when it comes to predictive programming, but also just the esoteric, because it does contain a pretty good idea or description of a maybe sim's not the word, but in a way, reality being described as something of a sim. And then you have this Corona reference constantly. Season 3 premieres March 15th, and they constantly show what appears to be a Corona. Again, this is not mysticism. We cannot mystify this stuff. These are not coincidences. Now, the synchromystics will say, oh, you're crazy if you call it a coincidence. Well, you are. But you're also crazy if you say this was done by aliens or God. This was done by a super advanced propaganda system, operatives, metascriptors, any sufficiently developed technologies indistinguishable from magic. It looks like magic to some. And look at the logo for Season 3. You got 3 vertical bars, right? Or you're looking out a square window at the Twin Towers. Another really good example of how this stuff works when it comes to these movies. Look at 3%. So 3% is a science fiction series which involves this world divided into two sides, offshore, inland, progress and devastation. To go into the future, to be allowed into the advanced part of society, you have to be sterilized. And then you have a hole in your sleeve, as in they punch a hole, like that shows where you got your pokey, that you're sterilized, so you're allowed into the advanced part of society. The people who are breeding are still in the slums. So it's called 3%. So the 3% are those who are saved. Now, if you look at the logo from 3%, it just looks like 3%. But if you turn your head sideways, 90 degrees, the 3 has the Twin Towers in it. So what are you looking at? 311. Needle reference, obviously. So you have a 311 encoded into this. But then, in addition to looking at the Twin Towers on the side and having a 311 911 connection, therefore, when you look at the percentage symbol, there's the sign here for the percent, that looks exactly like the World Trade Tower as seen from a bird's eye view from above. So if you look at the Twin Towers from above and the side, it doesn't take a lot of work to twist that one around to see it, but the 311 911 connections are always there. Many of the movies, if not all of them, that contain 911 predictive programming contain it for 311, but nobody knew because 911 happened 20 years first and before. This goes for Vanilla Sky. This goes for much of Kubrick's work, The Shining, 2001: Space Odyssey. Look at all the misdirection. People are like, "Oh, The Shining, Kubrick did a Apollo 11, and he's telling us." No, that is an incomplete perspective. You're missing the stuff about JFK and 9/11. Same with Full Metal Jacket. A couple interesting connections. Full Metal Jacket. The character Joker is JFK, and he has a target on the side of his head, which I think is why Donald Trump has the 45-47 on the side of his head. It's a Kubrick clue there. Because 45-47, add them, you get 9/11, interestingly. And weirdly, 45-47 is the 616th prime, and 616 is another number of the beast by some accounts. But the Joker character is JFK, and it's a target on the side of his head, a reference to what? Full Metal Jacket, to the shooting of Kennedy, which was directed by Kubrick. Okay, and then one other point. There's 9/11 foreshadowing in that movie. Lean Dion says, remember the 33-year-old who fell into the 9/11 memorial abyss? Yeah, the only 9/11 jumper who actually existed. Yeah, we saw that. Now, that looked real to me, but it could have been fake and staged. We have no idea. I mean, the whole thing's a movie set. But yeah, that was the anniversary of 9/11, a 9/11 falling man, 33-year-old. Interestingly, he was kind of posed like the falling man, photographed by Richard Drew on 9/11, 33 years after he photographed Robert F. Kennedy falling to his death. Fig says, time is related to the moon, explained in my vid. Yeah, just post a link and I'll check out your video. I can't wait. MVP, the hardware vandal, says, bro, it has to be Synchro Mystic Alien God. No way could any movie director come up with such uncreative, contrived, obvious, narrative-pushing BS. Precisely. They try to do this argument from man couldn't do it. And I can name names, and I'm not trying to ridicule, but, for example, I mean, these are people I listen to. Human Vibrations was asked about this. Could man have scripted it all? Is it all scripted? And her answer was, no, it has to be a supercomputer. As in a computer man didn't make. Like, not our computers, but something that pre-existed us, I guess. AI. But the tendency to introduce something like this is because they're bewildered by something that is so advanced it seems like man couldn't. It's an argument from incredulity. But the problem with it is this. You're hiding the reality hackers. You're giving them cover. You're exonerating them. What if, and I've made this example before, this analogy. What if we said, computer hacking? No way. That's just way beyond human intelligence. Nobody could hack a computer. Yeah, we could build them, but no, we couldn't hack them. That's gremlins. So if you get hacked, it's a gremlin. You know who would benefit from this? Hackers. Hackers would be able to operate with no restrictions because people don't believe in them. They only believe in gremlins, which don't exist. So those who are claiming that AI, demiurges, and mysticism are doing the news are claiming that the news media has divine inspiration, for one, but they're also hiding the reality hackers. So again, predictive programming is not done by gremlins. Synchromysticism is actually dead. It's as dead as the Mandela effect. It's a zombie conspiracy at this point. Put it down. Nobody's interests are served by mystifying bullshit. We have to remain objective because we're dealing with mind control that is rooted in its ability. Their whole mind control only works if they can depose you as the arbiter of what you believe and get you to accept logical fallacies. These are sleight of mind tricks, and I'm not going to fall for any of it. And we should look at this as progress. We should be happy that synchromysticism emerged in 2006 or so when people were noticing stuff with symbols regarding these big events, with themes, mythical themes, and gods and demons and all these different things that were just like, what is going on here? Wizards behind the scenes, and they would mystify it. But a lot of the people who are into synchromysticism didn't get into politics. They were more about something quote higher. So all these people are like, oh, let's not focus on the little news and the violence. Let's think about higher things. Yeah, that's mysticism. That's let's not pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Let's look at the hologram of the big scary Wizard of Oz and tremble accordingly. No, not going to work with me. Tomino says to be, yeah, TBF sync was like 2012 before media skepticism. Yeah, see, synchromysticism was the de facto, or rather the default explanation. Because you're like, yeah, there is some synchronicities here. And I thought so too. Like, how else do you explain all these coincidences? Until you find out that they're not coincidences. It's scripted news. And some will say, there's no way man could script all this stuff. Oh, really? Are you telling me that there's no script for 9/11? There's no script for 2020? Event 201? That every single mass shooting has a script. We can agree. Now, if every single fake mass shooting has a script, if every single fake fill in the blank event has a script, then what's happening? They're acting out the script on the world stage, and then it becomes history. There we go, case made. They are writing our history in advance, and they only have to really do the big events heavy handedly. The other things will take care of themselves because all the rest of the news bounces off these big events as though they are real. These are the agenda setting events. So they can paint the zeitgeist in broad strokes and they can add their own nuance, but for the most part, you wouldn't know. It's like liars. And I make this point too. I'm not going to let someone straw man me and say, oh, you're saying everything is scripted. That's a straw man. It doesn't have to be everything. It just has to be in broad strokes, and then it goes down from there. But the fact is, if everyone bounces off the same parameters, it's internally consistent. It's a closed system. And that's what I mean when I say the media is a closed system. And our perspective, the off-world stage perspective, is outside of their closed system, recognizing it as merely a model. Like, look, normies live in a model of the world where nukes are real, where all the news is real and nobody on TV lies. That's their model. Now, it's naive and it's wrong, but it's not the territory. So the mainstream media model is not the territory. The mainstream plus, which is like conspiracy, MSM plus, the stuff that adds on to it, that's not the model either. It's a more frenetic and nightmarish version, but it's not a model that reflects the real thing. The model that reflects the real thing is the one that recognizes, that is aware of it being merely a model, and includes not only is this a perspective, but also accounts for the fact that much is being excluded. Most of our worldview is formed by, paradoxically, what they don't show us. Okay, continuing. right, let's see. Okay, thank you for the link. I'm going to go ahead and bookmark it. You can also send me stuff. You can also post it on Gilded. Go to ips.monster. I have a quick update for you again regarding this lawsuit. So the IPS has been at war with a very wealthy, politically connected hacker. And the hacker tried to shut down the IPS by tricking YouTube into thinking he was me, claimed my voice, and then he downloaded the music we used on the channel onto a SoundCloud account. And then, whenever we'd be live, he would file copyright strikes against the music that he didn't own and against my voice, which he didn't own, and he would shut us down, defund my channel repeatedly. So he tried to drive me out of business. And then there was a smear campaign. He did his best to try to destroy me. He even sent a spy to one of our art events. I'm assuming he paid her to find information out about me. So this stalking campaign was was going strong for about a couple of years, and then we doxed him. And then he kind of went into hiding, but he still continued to hack and to stalk, but it was a little more reserved because then he got a job at the White House. Now, I didn't quite understand the significance of the fact that my stalker moved in his position and somehow got involved in the White House press corps. But then eventually kind of realized, okay, this guy is his own worst enemy, and he's eminently vulnerable to a lawsuit because he's politically connected. This would be really easy to tear him down in the court of public opinion, and the fact that he was anonymous was the only roadblock. We found out who he was, and so then I proceeded to file a cyber stalking and then, of course, a cyber squatting case against him. I worked with law enforcement to try to make something happen. Nothing has happened. So the IPS had to kind of defend itself, which we have done. We doxed him, we sued him, we sued Google, and everything's moving forward according to plan. So here we are, nearly 6 years later, after I got all the evidence I needed on my side, and I have Google, YouTube, and Goldfinch in court in a Superior Court of California. And one of the rules they have there is if someone's going to file a motion, they have to confer with the other party. So Google calls me whenever they're going to file something, and they explain to me what they're going to do. So the way this thing is proceeded is, like with every case, they try to dismiss the case. So they immediately try to dismiss it, and I filed a counter to it. I amended my complaint. So this has gone back and forth, and we have about a month until our first pre-trial meeting. And so last night they called me, and they asked me if I'm willing to drop the case. And the guy sounded kind of nervous about it when he asked. I'm like, he asked me, he said, look, we looked at your causes of action here, and if you're alleging fraud, it's only fraud if there's intentionality. And Goldfinch tricked us. So we could not have intentionally have stolen your content or used content theft to harass and stalk you. So they're basically saying, we didn't do nothing. To which my answer is, I have the email exchange between your attorney and this defendant. And this email exchange will demonstrate either A, Google had someone there who was purposefully doing this and needs to be charged with the crime, or they're negligent. So it's one of the two. It's either fraud or negligence. And so my point of it is I can't know for sure because I don't have those emails. So they're asking me to drop it because I can't prove intent. And I'm like, no, I'm not dropping this. I'm going to write the judge and request the court subpoena those emails so I can find out if your legal department was paid off to do this. And so that's what I said. I said, I think that someone in your legal department was either friends with Goldfinch or they were paid off and a crime has been committed, and there's no third option. Negligence or intentional fraud. There's no third option where Google doesn't pay. That's kind of where the conversation went. So they're going to file another motion. I'm going to counter it. But in the meantime, not only am I going to request those emails, but I'm going to ask the judge in a letter that I've drafted here to take whatever action is in their power to bring about a criminal indictment And I have years of police reports, FBI reports, IC3 reports. I have it all. So that's my next step here. So anyway, it's all good news in my opinion. It's a win-win-win situation. Last week, Goldfinch got served, and this is interesting too. I had him served at the headquarters of Marco Polo because he's on Marco Polo. This is a bombshell because Marco Polo is run by a guy named Garrett Ziegler. Garrett Ziegler worked for Trump for 4 years. Ziegler and Goldfinch are extremely good friends, admittedly. So they're good friends. Goldfinch finances Marco Polo, and he's like a anonymous partner. So Ziegler's being sued by Hunter Biden because Marco Polo and his company hacked Hunter's computer. The Bidens don't know that Ziegler's anonymous defendant is a bona fide hacker. They don't know this, but they will soon. And I had him served at Marco Polo to make sure this fact comes out. He has about a week and a half to respond. We'll see what happens with that. But anyway, it's moving forward according to plan. It's a win-win-win situation. There is no way we lose as long as we maintain the process. And this would not have been possible if it were not for subscribers, for supporters, super chatters, believers in this, and just people who are participating. Because if it weren't for the participation in the think tank, this wouldn't have proceeded at all. And what we're doing, it's really not about the money. I mean, at this point, I'm not even thinking about that. This is about punching Big Brother in the face. This is about a bunch of conspiracy theorists, so called, marginalized, impugned, censored, harassed with the aid of YouTube's legal department, getting back at them. Because had they not interfered, look back 2017, 2018, had there not been interference from this government connected hacker, we would have had growth this entire time. We wouldn't be at 1,000 subs. At one point we had gone from 0 to 12,000 in a matter of months. This channel, this concept, the parallel media, skepticism, metascript breakdown would be far larger, more extensive, and more damaging. But anyway, that was their point. They tried to censor us. Alex Jones is not censored. None of these truthers talking about the pokey are, quote, censored. They're promoted. They're lauded. They're the officially sanctioned, approved counter narrative. They're not censored. It's not censorship if the government's not involved. We have been censored. So we're going to hit back very soon. Mark Johnson says, I tried to give you a small dono via Super Chat for legal shenanigans, but it keeps giving me an error message. Well, I appreciate it very much. And yeah, if you want to support the channel, go to ips.monster or go to patreon.com/infiniteplane You can sign up for as low as $1 a month, $5 a month. You can also simply take part in the chat sections. I mean, when it really gets down to it, the real value of this thing is the participation, the think tank, the ideas. We are a fake news wood chipper. We are clear-cutting forests of misinformation while truthers are running around safe and designated fake trees. Safe that in the sense that you're allowed to attack these things. You can also go to my eBay shop. I put a link right there. I have been busily producing a lot of IPS art cards, and these are the size of Pokemon cards. These are 3.5 by 2.5 inches. They arrive in baseball card sleeves, and as you can see here, I have a wide array of penguins, and these are watercolor and acrylic. 99 cents, free shipping. Prices may go up. As you can see here, I do have a reputable store. 953 items sold since I opened it a little over a year ago, and predominantly baseball card sized works of art. And right now it's still kind of small. I used to do a lot more, and I used to make a lot more at this. So you can still get paintings under $5, but it's going to go up very soon. So I would recommend, if you want to pick up some of these Penguinati art cards, go to the link below, and it's also linked at ips.monster. MVP says the White House hired him because he's the Red Power Ranger. Yeah, it's the curse of the Red Power Ranger. So there's there is a thing called the Curse of the Red Power Ranger, and it turns out that when we were figuring out who this person was, one of the things that surprised us was that it turns out that he is a an actor. He was in Fast and the Furious, Lord of the Rings, King Kong. He was a Power Ranger, the Red Ranger, a stunt double. He did like the fighting moves. So there's this thing called the Curse of the Red Power Ranger. Every actor who has played the Red Ranger has had some kind of a tragedy. So here's from Fandom Wire. Oh, the Red Ranger curse. There's quite a lot here. 12 tragedies that confirm it. Let's just do a quick rundown. Yeah, I, I know them off the top of my head, so I'm just going to quickly run down. One of the Rangers kidnapped an elderly couple and forced them to sign papers to give him money, tied them to an anchor, and threw him off a boat. Another one got into a fight with a friend over a girl and killed his friend with a samurai sword. Then the other one who killed the elders, while he was in prison, he self castrated with a razor. It gave himself a sex change. And then another one of these rangers had, I think his name was Pua something. Another one of these Red Rangers beat his wife nearly to death and then killed himself. And then his replacement, and this was a guy that Marcus Goldfinch was an actual body double for on several movies. His replacement as a ranger got into issues with COVID fraud. So a Red Power Ranger had taken all kinds of COVID money. I think he got like millions of dollars in COVID loan fraud. And so yeah, here we go. Red Ranger actor, multi-million dollar PPP COVID relief fraud scheme, 3.5 million in small business loans. And that's actor St. John. Another Red Ranger. So now so we got murders, we've got crimes of passion, we've got someone doing significant self-harm, and then we have this, and then we have Goldfinch. And Goldfinch is poised to take a huge fall. Because think about this too. He's the guy that hacked Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, you may not like Hunter Biden, you may not like the Bidens, maybe you're not voting for Joe Biden like me, but half the country is sympathetic towards Hunter Biden, believe it or not. And they would love to know who hacked that computer. And when they find out that, hey, by the way, the guy that hacked Hunter Biden's computer, not only was he a Red Ranger, but he's the top QAnon influencer on Telegram. He runs the JFK Jr. magazine George, and he's in the White House press corps. And people are like, wait a minute. They're gonna run into this. They're gonna say, wait, you're saying that there's a QAnon in the White House press corps? There's been a QAnon in Trump's shadow this entire time? This destroys Donald Trump's plausible deniability. He knows all about the Q operation because of Goldfinch. It destroys his plausible deniability. And again, he's in the White House press corps. If the White House press corps knew that Q was one of them, they would flip. And that's another aspect to it. Yeah, I'm mentioning he's part of the Q operation. I'm soft pedaling it. I'm toning it down. Yeah, he's part of the Q operation, demonstrably. Huge influencer in QAnon. Easy to prove. But the truth of it is, he's one of the Q droppers. He is a central operative to this psyop. And then here's another element to it, because David Hogg, one of our favorite crisis actors, David Hogg would have some personal beef with Marcus Goldfinch if he knew that it was Marcus Goldfinch as MGTV who doxed him as an actor and made him go viral on YouTube. When, here it is, this is from MGTV David Hogg on August 7th. David Hogg is not a crisis actor, just don't ask YouTube. So when David Hogg went viral as a crisis actor, it was because of Goldfinch. And weirdly enough, this story was covered widely, and none of these newspapers have MGTV's name anymore. They scrubbed it. I actually have this as part of my investigation. If you go to webarchive.org and you look at these articles about David Hogg being called out as a crisis actor, you'll find MGTV is mentioned. Whether it's BBC, Forbes, Yahoo News, they mention Marcus Goldfinch TV, MGTV. He's the one who started this David Hogg thing. But in the new articles and all the updates, it's been scrubbed. So what happened is when he left YouTube as being MGTV, the conspiracy theory guy, and he went to go work at the White House as George News, they scrubbed his online past as best they could. But what I've been able to do is compare with the web archive, and I was able to show that, look, George News used to be anonymous. I mean, look, this is an old story. Everybody here knows it. My point being, I can prove that the White House Communications Office Dropbox is managed by his email address. If you go to marcusgoldfinch.com, you can also see he was showing off classified documents. These are the types of things that Trump was being raided for at Mar-a-Lago. Goldfinch has some of these. He's got this secret document, U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, and in this video, he's flipping through his secret document and he signs it with all kinds of stuff about Q and George and the number 17 and the best is yet to come. Anyway, this person is certainly one of the dumbest criminals you'll ever encounter because he sent out a full confession. Not only a confession, but copies of the emails that he sent to YouTube to trick them. So he actually shared his entire methodology. So this is why I think I have such an easy case here. I have admissions of guilt and malicious intent. All the conditions are met for fraud, and fraud committed and abetted by, aided by Google. So just a quick update there. Let's move on to other things. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we started early today. This may be a normal thing. I may just be in here every morning. I have a routine, and I've been trying to build up to Ips Morning Deprogram, where we spend about an hour or so here just going over the things we're going to talk about later, and then in the evening we do open phones. And I'm probably going to continue to do this. Let me catch up on the notes. I had a few more things. So Ryan Garcia said, when an earthquake happens tomorrow in Los Angeles and Vegas, I don't want to hear anyone speak bad about the Lord Jesus Christ, King of Kings. Okay, so don't badmouth the King of Kings. Those of you in Vegas and Los Angeles on 6/6 when it gets earthquaked. Ryan Garcia says there will be an earthquake in various places. Taiwan, LA is next. Jesus is returning soon. Rejoice. Okay. 4.8 earthquake eclipse. Yeah, this guy is shooting from the hip. That's again Ryan Garcia. Jay Diggs mentioned before he said he was just pretending to be crazy for his last fight. Yeah, look, he came out and admitted that this was all a joke. He admitted this on one of these podcasts. He's like, look, I'm just going to be the biggest troll on the internet. And he did. He made $50 million. You know, he bragged about this. But then after he said he was just trolling about being Me Too'd at the Bohemian Grove, then he launches his earthquake prophecies. It's like, you know, that doesn't make sense. You should have just stuck with, stay in your character. Stay in character. Long term, you'll do better. Imagine if David Icke never let the reptilians go. He'd be huge right now. Okay, by the way, we were talking about the Boeing Starliner, and yeah, they had some issues getting up into the space station, as we expected. Got a comment from Aritos on BitChute says, so many 666s in your phone number and 18s. My number's kind of vague. Just briefly, 563-999-3664. Nines are nines, they're not sixes. You know, no matter how many this gematria calculator thing has got people to the point where anything can mean anything. And no, this is not a magical number. It's 563-999-3664. Like, if I wanted 666, I would have had it, and I've had it before. I'm just saying that number isn't that my number isn't like crazy or mystical or suggestive in any way. It practically has every number in it. See, Kamala Harris gets called an effing murderer on Jimmy Kimmel. So brainwashed people who believe in fake dead people are angry at Kamala Harris, who's fake. And of course, this is how it works. And notice this too. Okay, Normieville sleeps. Normieville's sitting there laughing at the laugh tracks, just going with the flow. Whatever's on TV, they're cool with. The truthers are anti everything. You got the pro and the anti, the MSM and the MSM plus. But the thing is, the truthers are on the right wing. What happens if you lean left, but you're not a normie? Well, then you become agitated and woke. Agitated and woke. Triggered and woke. It's the same thing as being hopped up on truther pills. You can't say Alex Jones is not triggered. He cries every day. He lashes out angrily. The guy is hysterical. And that's because he has taken all the red pills. Similarly, if you take all the woke pills, you go off the rails like someone on the far right does. So here's Kamala Harris being harangued by brainwashies on her side of the fence.
Stop the genocide! 15,000 children died because of you! Stop the genocide! You're a murderer!
Stop the genocide. Now, this is about Palestine. It's not about chemtrails, for those of you chemtrail believers. But she got called an effing murderer on Jimmy Kimmel. Let's see here. Got some more notes to go through. Joe Rogan says, how far away is America from seeing another JFK type situation? Everybody's talking about this. The JFK situation. General Flynn has been pretty blatant about it. Climate change directly affects mental health. Now, you may or may not believe that. Climate angst. People do get angst from fearing the end of the world because of the climate. I think it's true. Placebo effect. Nocebo effect. Psychosomatics. Beliefs matter. I'm a non-believer, so this stuff doesn't affect me. But if I believe this stuff, yeah, it would mess me up. And I would say that climate change does affect the mental health of its believers. They get mad at the non-believers. They believe that the sky is falling. They believe that the world is being destroyed by man and that nobody cares. And they're just mad about it. That's the climate change believer for you. But what about the chemtrail believer? Are they not directly experiencing mental health issues? Yeah, they're paranoid, they're phobic, they're making bad arguments from ignorance, they're loading their questions, and they are angry all the time. Chemtrail believers are so miffed by the non-believers. And I often point out that the only difference between them and the climate change believers is chemtrail believers don't do activism. In fact, like a month ago, I put out a video and I'm like, you guys need to start throwing tomato sauce on paintings and gluing yourselves to airplanes like the climate change people. None of them took me up on it. And look, if you can convince me chemtrails exist, I will glue myself onto an airplane. Just putting it out there. If you want to debate, I'm open. Okay, a few random memes. Here's Trump leaning forward, like 45 degrees, leaning forward, talking to someone shorter than him. And Liam Neeson tweeted, "You've been hit by a smooth criminal." Not bad. I mean, 34 felonies. I believe it's going to be 88 in total when they're done. Man from China wears a Kobe Bryant helicopter crash costume at a comic convention. Now, Kobe Bryant's death was faked. We could go into this. The last person to interview Kobe Bryant alive, Stephen Jackson, George Floyd's twin. Kobe Bryant was part of the I Can't Breathe thing before George Floyd made it cool. I don't know if you remember that Kobe Bryant I Can't Breathe shirt. I think he got that from, here we go, Kobe Bryant on Lakers wearing the I Can't Breathe 2014. So he was part of this before it was a thing. before that really blew up in 2020. Now, why is this significant? Because he turned, and here's the number, he turned 42 in the summer of 2020. They celebrated his birthday posthumously. The NBA had Mamba Week. So Mamba Week, NBA all wears 42. Not coincidentally and not synchromistically, Chadwick Boseman, who played Mr. 42, again for Jackie Robinson, who crossed the MLB color line, another 42 with the race war psyops. Chadwick Boseman played Mr. 42, dies at 42 after raising 4.2 million for COVID, and his death is commemorated by MLB. So all of MLB is wearing a 42 on their shirt, but not for him, but for Jackie Robinson. So Jackie Robinson Week has MLB all wearing 42. Mamba Week has NBA all wearing 42. What is that? And by the way, his helicopter crash had predictive programming in a commercial with Kanye where Ye's in a black helicopter and Kobe throws a basketball bomb at him, and then he's in a helicopter in Legends of Chamberlain Heights, which crashes and burns. Anyway, little side note, Kobe Bryant not dead. And not only is he not dead, but the Lakers general manager was hanging out with The Rock, and they were speaking to a group of students, and he said, Kobe Bryant was so moved by Heath Ledger after watching Dark Knight that he had me arrange to have dinner with Heath and learn some stuff from him. So Kobe Bryant, according to the general manager of the Lakers, was hanging out with Heath Ledger, and he learned how to use some of that Joker tech to improve his basketball game. Yeah, that's kind of a interesting story. Again, if you haven't heard about this, now the reason why this is significant to me is Heath Ledger is like a death faker. Heath Ledger maybe would have been someone that Kobe Bryant would have wanted to talk to, specifically because, he has experience in death fakery. Well, here is Lakers GM talking about Kobe Bryant hanging out with Heath Ledger. Now, the only reason I'm bringing this up is that Heath Ledger was already dead for several months before the movie came out.
Where there was one time when Kobe, who I worked with for 18 years, was going back to play in Madison Square Garden, and he had just seen The Dark Knight. Obviously, you guys saw that movie. And he's like, hey, hook me up with dinner with Heath Ledger because he got so locked into that role. I want to know how he mentally went there. And so he had dinner with Heath, and he talked about how he locks in for a role, and Kobe used some of that in his game.
Great.
Cool. Kobe used some of that Joker in his game. Such BS. Or it's true. I think it's true. I think it is true. I think he did do it. I think he did go talk to Heath Ledger. But it was behind the scenes, and this is some kind of unintentional leak, perhaps. I don't know exactly how that... Anyway, I'm looking at this as highly suspect. Here's a poster, or rather this is a magazine from 1977 when Skylab fell. Skylab protective helmet. Don't be caught dead without one. So you have these Skylab space junk helmets. And this is, again, it was a crash of 79. So Skylab fell 7/11/79. 42 years later, Richard Branson launched on that day. But back then, they were already talking about this idea of stuff falling from the sky. It's been a narrative building for a long time, and it's been amplifying in recent years. When Roland Emmerich did Moonfall, it pretty much sealed the deal for me. That's what's going to happen. He did the Independence Day, which created a frame of reference for 9/11. Well, Moonfall is going to have us pretty prepared as far as the imagery projected onto the collective psyche. It's going to be pretty ready to accept space junk, which they're already doing more and more space junk all the time. So I got an interesting comment here from Tim Osman. Uncut floating astronauts from, and he spelled astronauts correctly, ASTRONOTS, knots, because they're, I say actronauts, but anyway, uncut floating astronauts from today Flat earthers can't explain uncut footage of people floating. The wires and vomit comet cannot account for this. So, what he's admitting to here is that he finds this footage convincing, that he cannot fathom how they might be able to simulate floating in space. Like, okay, you find this to be perplexing or rather convincing, good for you. I don't. I'm going to go ahead and play a few clips here of what this guy finds to be realistic.
And so you're hearing that, and it's definitely relatable for a long trip.
Do you all know that show Blue's Clues? No, I don't. I never watched it, but I've seen commercial. I've seen sections of it. Blue's Clues. I think I had like younger siblings watched it. So Blue's Clues is this character who kind of just like Pee Wee Herman, but it's all cartoon. He just has these cartoon props. So he's basically playing with green screens all day. That's Blue's Clues. It's a children's show. No different than the ISS, which is a children's show. And they just sit around playing with green screens all day. But I'm looking at this ISS footage, and to me, it looks like Blue's Clues. The way that they're staring at the camera, and the way that the background just looks fake and the objects don't move like they're really there. Like, I'm sorry, this looks like Blue's Clues to me. We all have our opinions, but now, what is his expertise versus mine? Well, his expertise is not in video editing, I don't think, but mine is. I've done video editing, I've done chroma key, green screen, special effects. I've done a lot of different types of video editing and special effects, enough to where, and then I have a deep appreciation for film. I was a film studies major. And I know for a fact that if I was going to do some kind of a special effects gig, and I put out stuff like NASA, I would lose the gig. Like, sorry, we can't accept this. I can see some fuzz around the edge of this person. They're not in the room. It's fake looking. Interestingly, though, most experts who are professional video editors don't even question NASA. And it shows you the power of cognitive bias and trust. The old argument from authority. They trust the screen. But I don't believe that this constitutes scientific evidence. Oh yeah, they're a couple hundred miles above the Earth, just floating around. No, I don't think so. This is so phony and so fake to me. And this is not just me being incredulous. This is me being honest. Like, in my honest assessment, like, my eyes do not see people in a room here. I see these people have a qualitative difference in how they're lit than the background, which looks weirdly flat and 2D. Nothing about this looks real to me. I'm just saying, if we're coming down to our opinions, in your opinion, it looks real. In my opinion, it looks fake. In my informed opinion. However, his argument is there's no way they could fake it. How could you fake people just floating for so long? It's like, haven't you seen the behind the scenes of Inception with the rotating movie sets? But again, looking at this guy,
Again, if you're just
I'm sorry, it just looks so fake. It is cartoonish. It's laughable. It's risible. It's risible. It's the worst special effects in the world. And my best explanation is this: they can only hire people who have high security clearance. They're not drawing from the best of the best. They're having to work with whoever they can get because these are all government workers. But anyway, what Timmy said was, flat earthers can't explain uncut footage of people floating. Okay, well, Cubstar says unless it's pre-recorded, which, why would you think it's live? Do you think that you can perform these stunts live? If you're dealing with green screens, it's already post-production. I mean, AVR, you can do live, but a lot of the stuff, like the moving around, it's going to require post-production. So we have to assume it's live? No. Mousegate, for example, shows you that this stuff has to be pre-recorded. You know, Mousegate, if you don't remember, when they sent the genetically modified mice out into space, there was this footage that appeared to show a mouse on the outside of a rocket going at Mach 8 or whatever. Now, that shouldn't be possible. But the fact of it is, somebody, likely Elon Musk, as a joke, put a rat on the outside of the rocket. Now, that could not have been done live. You weren't looking at something live. It was pre-produced and then performed or played live. So what I'm saying is that one thing that could explain how they pulled it off is pre-recorded. And then Tim says, Vomit Comet only lasts for a few seconds and will have turbulence. Look, that's a straw man. Nobody, literally nobody, except for Timmy Osman, contends that the ISS astronauts are in a vomit comet. Nobody's making that claim. But the only reason we bring up the vomit comet is because that's how they train. They simulate zero G with these parabolic flights. Now, the problem with it is this, and if I was on the side of defending NASA, I wouldn't even bring up the vomit comets because the parabolic flights show how hair moves in zero G, and it's nothing like the way that the hair behaves on the ISS. On the ISS, it's all hairspray. You know, so much hairspray, they probably put a new hole in the ozone, or they would have if this were real. It's insane the amount of hairspray they're dumping on these people. Whatever happened to the ozone hole anyway? It would be ironic if it was a real hole in the ozone and it was caused by such stuff, because NASA has been badly faking hair in zero G for such a long time. When this new ISS movie came out, I'm like, look, if there's anything that's going to give away for the general public how fake the ISS is, it's going to be juxtaposing the movies with the quote real thing and showing them that the real thing is faker than the movies. So watch the hair. And I had my plans on watching the movie, reviewing it, and specifically noting the hair. And I think they were listening to me because the ISS movie comes out and there is not one loose hair. You know, normally they love to show it off, and that's because they're trying to create an illusion. But in the movie, nope, all slicked back, ponytails, not one loose hair. Why is that? It would give away the fact that they can't fake it as well. I mean, it's unbelievable, the cognitive dissonance people have to absorb. Pop quiz. Former President Trump will be in San Francisco for a fundraiser hosted by tech billionaires, and there will be a bird look-alike to greet him. It's called the Trump Chicken, and it's at a warehouse, and it's in a jailbird suit. So this is actually up by his opponents. How tall is the Trump Chicken inflatable? You can see it on the screen there. How tall is this inflatable bird? Pop quiz. While you're calculating this, I'm going to go through some more comments. Okay, Fig says the pyramid also relates to the volcano. Interesting. The volcano. You know, there is some kind of connection I made before with this, with the symbol of Jehovah, the fire on the mountain, the volcano, the Dianetics volcano, and the pyramid. And there may be something else. There's Vulcan, I believe. Isn't it Vulcan, the male counterpart to Venus? Vulcan is the god of fire and the god of volcanoes. Anyway, Vulcan is mentioned in the Freemasonic story. Here we go. Tubal Cain is the Vulcan of the pagans. Anyway, strange references, but you made me think of pyramids when you said volcano, and I thought, pyramids, Masons, Vulcan. Travis Cloud says the biggest achievement in Call of Duty is to get a nuke to kill every player in the lobby instantly, making you win the game. All right, we are joined by X322. Thank you for joining. This is Ips Morning Deprogram. Lean Dion says Tim Osman would hug all those weird dudes in the control room heaps. Oh yeah, he would jump up and down and clap his hands and cheer when the Dong rocket launches into space. And if you didn't know, the rocket's a symbol of resurrection. And you get into the terminology and the words, it's all pretty self-evident. This is consistent. You see that the sun worship has always been correlated with the worship of the male principle. active. That's why you have the phallic symbol, the obelisk. It's always been the case with sun worship. And so that's why you have the sun, the obelisk, and the rocket is the newest iteration of this obelisk symbol. So when the obelisk is going into space, it's resurrecting. It represents the dead sun god. The story is this: sun god dies because the Lord of Darkness chops him up, the Terminator line, where night meets day. The sun is being dismembered throughout the day. That's Osiris's fate. Then at night, he's put back together by his wife Isis. Only she can't find this one part because his murderer hid it. So she puts the obelisk on his grave to represent his missing member and to symbolize his resurrection. And this is Egyptian myth, it's all personification and it's just about the cycles of time. So then, if the sun dies, where do we get the new sun? Well, at night, the goddess is having a conjugal visit with the god of the earth. So you could look at that as, of course, the conception of the sun for the next day. So Horus is the child of darkness. You see the images of Isis holding the baby? Well, that's the sunrise. It's in the arms of night. She's got the robes with the stars. So that's the sun in the morning. So it's the sun god born again, baby Jesus, etc. And then the cycle starts all over again. But it's a daily thing. So the idea of Isis mourning, she's mourning him, and the obelisk is a symbol that she's going to resurrect him in the form of his son. And this is where you get this strange, like, how is the sun, like the sun personified Jesus is God Jesus? Are they two different people? Well, this is a weird story because it's like Osiris is more or less self reincarnating, if that makes sense. But this is also represented today with a symbol of the earth god of recycling. We got Gaia, but you have the idea of recycling is really, in my view, it's earth worship. It's to save the planet. It's to prevent the earth from destroying us because of what we're doing to it. But if you look at the recycling symbol, it's 3 nails, crucifixion association, again, dying, resurrecting, and it's the symbol of being reborn. In fact, I have some water bottles, and it's on the side it says, recycle, so these can be reborn as denim jeans. I'm like, okay, reborn, recycling, the recycling of souls, reincarnation. These are all things that are just intrinsic to the space program symbolism based upon Mystery Babylon. And that's why all these rockets have the names they do. Saturn, Osiris Rex, even Virgin Galactic, that's all goddess worship. And when you get into the launches and you break them apart, you can see that there's an esoteric aspect to it, and it all relates to ascension, the ascension of higher consciousness, the rising of the fire snake, the kundalini, the fire snake, the burning obelisk, the burning man. All these things pertain to Christ and ascension, or the soul transcending the flesh, exiting the material realm, going to the celestial realms. This is why, if you want to exit the material realm, you have to go Mach 33. Yeah, to get up into space, you got to go Mach 33. 33 times the speed of sound. In fact, there's a Mach 30, there's a ridiculous number of 33s connected with the space program, but the exit velocity. So to me, this is all very significant, because if you look at the Earth as the material realm and space as the new heaven, where you transcend the flesh, transcend the earth, transcend matter. Well, similarly, to go to the new heaven, which is space, on the surface of the earth, the escape velocity is 33 times the speed of sound. Again, 33 vertebrae on the spine, and that represents consciousness from the animal, the earth-based terrestrial root chakra, to the crown at the top, representing your alignment with the celestial, the heavenly. Because we exist on a spectrum from bestial to angelic. And the idea of ascending in consciousness is rising above the bestial. Well, the space program is all allegory for higher states of consciousness and ascension, going to heaven, rising above the material, where you also look at the idea of man's pollution. We're destroying the world, which makes the space program and makes Elon Musk our salvation, a savior. If you want to be saved, the symbol of salvation is the obelisk, the symbol of the risen savior, or the rocket, which can save you from the fallen world. If you look at it literally, because the old obelisks are just made of stone, they don't fly to heaven. So, what I'm saying here is that you have the literal interpretation of the space program, the exoteric, oh, we're going out there physically to space. Then you have the esoteric, which tells you that no, NASA is a mystery school. It's an Egyptian mystery school. Everything else is exoteric for the purposefully misled and brainwashed who take it literally. So Timmy Osman sees them as literally levitating. And I see this as the state manufacturing miracles for the masses to justify their belief in their religious paradigm. In fact, what they're doing here, I would call this levitation. That this is meant to be a miracle. Levitation of saints. The levitation of saints is the ability attributed to saints to fly or levitate. There are many mentions of levitating saints you can find. This was an ability attributed to early Christians. The apocryphal Acts of Peter gives tales of Simon Magus and others flying into the air. Peter prays to God to stop him from flying. Anyway, this is a story. St. Francis, could levitate to a height of 4 cubits or 1.8 meters while preaching. In the Orthodox tradition, John the Wonder Worker, 1896 to 1966, could levitate while in prayer. So levitation has been one of the miracles to show that they have ascended. Look, they're no longer weighed down by, and check this out, gravity. Just getting into the words of it. Gravity, grave, gravel, the earth, death. Life, ascension, light, rising above. So light as in lighter than air. So the idea here is that the levitation means they've transcended matter. The astronauts are our high priests. They're elevated. They're higher than us. They're levitating. They have God's eye, a God's eye view of the earth. They can see the earth as God sees it, just as the high priests can see heaven and tell us what it's like. But we can't see it because we're not able to levitate. We can't ascend. We're not ascended like them. So what I'm saying here is that while Timmy Osman with an S is impressed by the literal levitating, the Tim Osman with a Z recognizes that this is in fact the exoteric nonsense cover and just a way of conveying miraculous to convince people that they can do miraculous things. But no, it's fake. It's a magic show. Okay, continuing on comments. Quite a lot here. Fig says Horus is an anagram for hours. Yes, hours. Marking the time of the sun crossing the day across the sky. Luke Skywalker. Luke is light walking across the sky. Darth Vader means dark father. So you have dark father, Saturn. You see, Saturn rules the night, the sun rules the day. The sun gets killed by the Lord of Darkness, Saturn, every night, or at sunset. Set is another name for the Prince of Darkness in the Egyptian pantheon. So again, the sun setting, the death of the sun at sunset. This is encoded into the death of George Floyd. He was kneeled on for 8:46, a sun god ritual. The sun set at 8:46 in the Twin Cities on 5/25/2020. That's why they use that number. Additionally, 9/11 actually kicked off at 8:46 a.m. But this is, again, the story that we see again and again. That's why Darth Vader chops off Luke's sword hand. What does the sword symbolize? The obelisk. The lightsaber. Light, life, the obelisk, all connected to the same symbol. So you have the Death Star, which looks like the moon of Saturn, by design because Darth Vader is Saturn. So Darth Vader and Luke are fighting. Their swords are crossing, another important symbol of the cross, and Luke gets his sword hand chopped off. That is the dismemberment. That is the phallus of Osiris being chopped off, the light walker, the sun. And what happens then? Then Luke falls and he hangs from a cross in Cloud City until he can have his sword hand reattached, and then he's seen in the ship, working with his new sword. My point of it being, the masses have been indoctrinated with the exoteric version of this esoteric, ancient, archaic world view, Mystery Babylon dressed up like the Jetsons. Nothing has changed. The old world order is the new world order. It's just been updated in its nomenclature. We'll be taking phone calls tonight. IPS Morning Deprogram is just where I can catch up on notes. And then, oh yeah, by the way, let me see who guessed it first. The Trump chicken is 33 feet tall. Mark Johnson guessed 42. Good guess. Lean Dion, Travis got it. 33 feet tall. Yeah, the former President Donald Trump will be in San Francisco, and a 33-foot tall bird look-alike will greet him. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, this is just a question I brought up. I was thinking about this because I'm convincible. I am convincible. You can change my mind. Convince me. Whatever conspiracy theory you believe in exists, and I will fight for it. I will be your chemtrail Greta. Convince me they exist. I will shut down chemtrails. Believe me. Anyway, when it comes to NASA, they could convince me we're on a spinning ball 25K in circumference, but I need to see convincing footage. You can convince me that you're levitating, but I need to see convincing footage. But then this is something of a conundrum, because the evidence to convince me that they would provide would necessarily be qualitatively better and different than what they have shown us thus far. So for them to convince me that we live on a spinning ball, they can't show me the same old crap. So then they show me some good stuff. Oh, look, this is very convincing. And I'm like, wait a minute then. Even though you've showed me some really convincing stuff, this doesn't explain away decades of crap. Do you see my point here? It kind of raises the question. Why was the previous evidence so bad? Why did you have to wait this long to come up with something convincing? And you can't be fooled by this. Like, you can look at this like Timmy did and say, okay, I find this convincing. These guys are floating around. Well, I'm sorry. You still have to answer for the footage from 2005, which was way worse. 2010. Go back. 2015. Go back through the years and look at the various permutations, iterations of the space station, the various seasons of this reality TV show, and you'll see that they're getting better and better at faking floating. But you can't say, hey, look, it's 2026, they finally perfected it. You guys can't debunk this. I don't need to. It's a house of cards. I debunked you at the first story on this house of cards. And the whole thing falls when I pull one of these cards. You can't build on fake and make it realer and realer, and then it's like a lie. Here's an example. Land shark. Someone knocks on your door, but you heard there's a land shark, and so it's like a mailman. Like, oh no, the mailman's already come, so you don't answer. He knocks again. Pizza. We didn't order pizza, so you don't answer. He knocks again. Plumber. Oh, we do need a plumber. They open the door. The land shark comes in and he eats them. It's an old SNL skit. And it's like, you didn't believe him on the first knock. You didn't believe him on the second. It's the same voice. Nothing's changing. And you believe him when he finally says something you believe. That's the basis of the joke. The idea that he can just change his story and they fall for it. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're falling for NASA in 2024 and you still haven't dealt with the eminently debunkable garbage they've given us previously, you're kind of like one of these persons opening the door for the land shark. King Wormy says, what's your view on world stage inverts, Hollywood and politicians? Yeah, anyone who tells you that Hunter Biden is a woman is gaslighting you. Anyone who tells you that Sylvester Stallone is a woman is gaslighting you. They're just gaslighting themselves. They might as well say all dogs are cats at this point. All dogs are cats, all birds are fish. He's talking about EGI, and you have to be careful about this because if you don't stand for and support their conspiracies, then you're part of it. You know how many of these EGI people said, "Oh, I've seen you. You're definitely a woman." I'm like, okay, you've just thrown away your credibility with me anyway. It's either a scientific diagnosis based on forensic anthropology, or it's a pejorative that you use against people that don't believe you. No, but it's a troll thing. Look, the transvestigation fetishists are, borderline paraphiliacs. It's some kind of a kink, or they're just bored trolls. In all likelihood, it's a misinformation campaign. It gaslights you. They gaslight you. Like, look at Hunter Biden. That's a woman. It's like, well, look, there's 400, actually, there's 4,000 nudes of him. That's why I mentioned him. Or Stormy Daniels. Like, oh, Stormy Daniels is a man and Donald Trump's a woman. Okay, well, there's decades of video content of Stormy Daniels. So that raises the burden of proof. If you're going to say that's a man, now you have to address every video that contradicts you. And I brought this up, and these Christian transvestigationists are like, oh, we don't look at this adult content. Okay, so you're a transvestigationist, and you can't look at naked people? There's a problem here. You're never going to get the right answers if you're going to be blocking yourself from seeing your own evidence. Sort of like the other night I had a caller and they said that they were disturbed at how I used the phrase or the statement, fake dead kids' lives don't matter. I'm like, don't say fake dead kids. It's offensive. It's like, well, I understand some people are offended by some things. Don't subject yourself to it. And this person was like, I don't watch the news because it's terrible and violent. I can't look. Well, if you can't look, then you're in no position to say it's real. You have you don't get to have an opinion on my assessment of it being real or fake if you can't consult the evidence. You can just stay back there with the mob of believers and just be offended. But you're not in a position whatsoever if you can't examine the evidence. So if you're a transvestigationist, you've got to debunk 4,000 pictures of Hunter Biden. And anyway, I've confronted them and they all block me. They're the most dishonest trolls on the internet. They will block you. And one other point, they're all anons. Anybody who's anonymous who makes claims like this can be dismissed because they don't really believe what they're saying. Like if you really believed it, you wouldn't be anonymous. And the reason why they're all anonymous is they know if they go out there, they're going to be accused of being inverts. And it's also kind of a trick because here's their basic rule. Everybody on TV is the opposite of what they portray themselves as. Everybody who's famous. So like, well, the people that you know obviously won't fit that because they're not famous. And you don't know any famous people, so you can't check it. It's kind of like a catch-22. There's really no way you can, it's unfalsifiable. And then you get into the details. They're like, well, Alex Jones is a woman, they say. And I'm like, well, look at that brow. I mean, that's a very manly brow with his permanent frown. Very serious, stern expression. And they're like, well, that's an implant. Oh, Jones has a brow implant? So they move the goalpost. And so then I'm like, hypothetically, I'm just like, okay, well, what if he had a smooth brow? Wouldn't that contradict them? And you find some, anyway, my point being here, it's just like you can't win with them. It's like, oh, this person, they shaved their Adam's apple. Oh, they implanted an Adam's apple. They implanted a brow. They shaved the brow. It's unfalsifiable. They can never be wrong. Lean Dion says Rogan is a woman. Fako. What? This tells me that these people have never been at the gym. King Wormy says video editing. Okay, so if you're going to claim video editing with Hunter Biden's videos, you have to point to it and show me your expertise. If you can point to the ISS and diagnose it as fake, then you can go and show me how this is fake. Show me the green screen. I had someone try to say, because it's very well known that Sylvester Stallone was involved in a lot of nude content, erotica, adult content, etc. So if you're going to say he's a woman, you have to go through all these videos. And I would send pictures and links to people on Twitter, and they would block me, they would ban me, or they would say, oh, it's a prosthetic. They can never be wrong. So, anyway, transvestigationism is for ignorant, bored trolls. That's about it. Here's King Wormy with an all caps straw man. So, all the world stage people are their true gender. Like, you don't agree with me, therefore you must agree with a mischaracterization, the complete opposite. Give me a break. You're transduced. You have no evidence, yet you're making the claim. And so I wonder, what is your motivation? What is your motivation here? If you can spend all day staring at the crotches of female celebrities and male celebrities, I think your priorities are off. Is that where trutherism is at right now? I saw this one picture. They're like close-ups of I think it was Chris Cornell, Elvis, and Trump. All these pictures of these various celebrities who are like sitting down cross-legged, or and the transvestigators are on Twitter spending hours and hours a day poring over photographs. But like, aren't you also aware that they use Photoshop? They touch up images, etc. Dwayne Garrett says prosthetic suits. King Wormy says, okay, so video editing doesn't exist. Again, bad argumentation. You need to provide evidence. I'd bring out Hitchens' razor. What is it with these truthers making wild claims but never backing them up? You've had plenty of time. If you're a transvestigator in 2024, you're a fetishist. You've got a paraphilia. You like it, and that's fine. I'm not knocking it, but just admit it. Like if you're a QAnoner and you're still fixated on JFK Jr., you are an erotomaniac. Dwayne Garrett says crotch spotting. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not only is it absurd, but it lacks evidence, and then they keep on trying to get you to believe it without evidence, and they also try to tell you to not believe what you perceive. So what you're left with here is gaslighting. Like you might as well just it's gaslighting. It's a fetish. There's nothing to it. There's nothing real about it. Nobody's provided any evidence. And then you look at some of these ones that they hyper focus on, and it's like their features are being pointed at as like, oh, these are ubiquitously, definitively male features. And it's like, well, you're using a skull overlay as though every human being is going to fit this exact pattern. And it's kind of ignorant about forensic anthropology. And I took something of a course on it at Fort Lee, Virginia, as a Pierce Mortuary College. I was a 92 Mike. So at first I was NVC, but I reclassed. And so 92 Mike is mortuary affairs. And so we spend a lot of time around skeletons and studying anatomy. And there's multiple categories for skulls. You can't just use one. And then what's more, look, I embalmed hundreds of people, maybe close to 1,000, I don't know. And I've seen a lot of dead bodies, nude bodies. And so when you look at these people making these claims, they have a very narrow view. Like all men look like this, all women look like this, shoulder width must be this, clavicles must be like this, and it's really not the case. And I have a few other things I can shine a light on just from that experience. Like all these people who believe in suddenly dead, like, oh, people are just dropping dead from the pokey, and then their bodies are clotted. Like the clotting, like the clot shot. There's still people, like, if you believe in clot shot, you don't know anything about embalming. And I can explain briefly. If you die unexpectedly, they do an autopsy. When they do an autopsy, they cut your arteries necessarily. They do a big incision, all your arteries are cut. So if your arteries are cut, you can't be embalmed in the usual single point injection where you would get clots. When you're embalmed after an autopsy, it requires 6 different points of injection. Leg, arm, side of the head, side of the head. 6 different points of injection, and clots are not a factor. Whereas if you die of natural causes, there's no autopsy, then there's only one hole in the neck for injection, and then one for drainage. Drains from the jugular, inject through the carotid artery. My point of it is this: the only time you deal with clots is with natural causes, not from people who suddenly died. And clots are the norm. And the reason you have clots is that these bodies who died of natural causes have been sitting in a refrigerator for 3 or 4 days, if not longer. And what do you think happens to blood when it's no longer circulating? It congeals, it clots up. The reason why you have forceps inside of the jugular is to remove clots. The entire time you're displacing the clotted blood supply with embalming fluid. Most of what you do is clot removal. I just remember sitting there in afternoons just basically washing the corpse and pulling clots. And the reason why I was always quick to pull clots is that if you don't pull a clot, you could have swelling. You got the fluid circulating, and if there's some area that's clotted, yeah, it could swell, it could distend, it could cause issues. And I always got nothing but compliments for my work because I was very conscientious about this. I never swelled a body, and it does happen. But I was very aware of it. I had great trainers, great teachers in this. But my point of it is, yeah, all dead bodies dying of natural causes, embalmed with a single point injection, exhibit clots. Suddenly died, suddenly dead, unexpected deaths, people who have to be autopsied do not have clots because their arterial system has been decimated. Case closed. If you believe in a clot shot, you're believing in ignorance promulgated by liars and actors and propagandists. And I've called around about this, by the way. I did some background checks into some of these so-called embalmers that were talking to Stu Peters, and I couldn't prove that these people exist. I think that it's a bunch of actors. Again, just another indicator that anti-vax is a controlled opposition position, which is why I'm anti-anti. I am anti-anti, I am anti-pro. If you're pro-anti, you're controlled opposition, and you might as well be pro. Okay, let's move on. Commoner says it's amyloid clots, not blood clots. You don't know that. And again, if the person suddenly died, there would be an autopsy and there wouldn't be clots. There would not be clots. You understand? If somebody dies and it's unexpected, it wouldn't be a single point injection. It's required that they examine their organs, weigh their organs, test everything. So no, you got debunked. Clot shots have been debunked. And if you want to stand by clot shots with no evidence, you want to stand by Donald Trump's a woman with no evidence, be my guest. Kobe Bryant's a woman. Snoop Dogg's a woman. I've seen it all. All the NFL players are women. Well, none of these theories have anything to add to the conversation but noise. King Wormy says all the first ladies are female. LOL. You could convince me that first ladies, but you couldn't I don't know. I mean, Trump, tricky. Although to be honest, when I was a little kid, I do remember being really a young kid seeing Ronald Reagan on the news, and I seem to remember thinking that he looked grandmotherly, like my friend's grandmother, but that doesn't mean anything. I wasn't transvestigating him. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. And I know some people can't move on. Some people are still stuck in 19. If you're stuck on chemtrails, you're in 1999. If you're still anti-vax, you're stuck in 2020. If you're still chasing Jews, then you're stuck in, what was the year that the protocols of the learned elders of Zion came out? When did that get released? 1924. You might be stuck in the 20s. But like a lot of you, not you, but a lot of truthers need time machines. Like you need to catch up. Like you're so far behind. If you're still a synchro mystic, you're in 2006. If you're Menduzled, you're in 2012. Auto hoaxing is the future. All right, let's see what we have here. T-Dog135 says David Knight has a lot of clotting news. They love it. They love this stuff. It's morbid and it's gross, but they love it. It's money, though. It's money. It's fear. It's fear porn. It's fear porn. Anti-vax is fear porn. Are you a fear porn consumer? I'm not. I'm not at all interested in it. And here's something else. And I don't mean to sound, cold or callous, but if it was true, if all the worst fears were true, then why would you warn them? It's like, look, you're claiming that the other party wants to kill you with this thing that will also kill them, and they don't know. Just let them never interrupt an enemy when he's making a mistake. Isn't that Napoleon? For a guy who never existed, who was just a personification of the sun, Napoleon has said a lot of very, very intelligent things. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Another favorite of mine by Napoleon would be, I believe it's history is lies agreed upon. And I've updated that one to media is a set of lies agreed upon. What is the world stage but agreed upon lies and narratives and stories that we tell ourselves? Going through some comments. Infinite Jack says 33. It's correct. The Trump chicken is 33 feet tall. Thirst says transtard. King Wormy is a trans fetishist. And he might even be reality fluid. Mandela affected. And again, look, my whole point of it is this. The V issue was always a controlled opposition issue and a foot bullet. And it was all fear porn. But it does have a different agenda. That's the exoteric. But the esoteric side was they introduced to the world a new concept of sin that would empower the priesthood to regulate the sinners and to save them if they choose to be saved. But they don't want to save everybody. They need half the population to remain unsaved so they can be pointed at as an example of how not to be. That's how religions work. Religions are based on war. Us versus them. It's a central struggle. T-Dog135 says One-Eyed Jack and the Mars Spiders. That would be a nice iteration. Whatever happened to the murder hornets? We got the spiders landing in New York, giant spiders from Mars. Okay, moving on. And when I say we are moving on, we're moving on from chemtrails, we're moving on from truth or orthodoxies, and all the distractions. And I often tell people when someone says, "Don't be distracted by something," go get distracted by it. Look into it. That's another one of these things I notice among truthers are like, "Hey, look, it's fake, it's distraction. Don't look at it. Move on to something else. They're just trying to distract you." I'm like, no, that's not good enough. We're not labeling things fake and then stepping away from it. No, what we're doing is we're understanding why we know it's fake. You see, the people who say it's fake and they stop looking are low information non-believers. Low information non-believers are just as bad as low information believers. If you don't know why you don't believe it, if you haven't debunked it, your non-belief is worthless. We aim to be informed about that which we dispute, which we do not believe in. We are informed non-believers. Huge difference, huge qualitative difference. Auto hoaxers is a step up, a step higher. That's why we figured out what predictive programming is. It's why we're not falling into the synchro mystic trap. As much as I find that conversation interesting, and it is interesting, a lot of it is symbolism, obviously, but we have to remember here that the logical fallacy employed with synchromysticism hides the reality hackers. Okay, just a couple more things. Boeing Starliner Starcraft spacecraft. This is the Boeing I've been talking about. And look, we predicted, based on predictive programming in Leave the World Behind and news events that followed, we predicted there would be issues with this. I called it cursed, the Boeing curse. Boeing's spacecraft docks after thruster issues. The earlier docking attempt was called off. when problems were discovered with 5 of the 28 thrusters in the capsule. So how did we know that it was going to be problematic? How did we know if we're not correct in our assessment? You see, we're consistently vindicated. Okay, another pop quiz for those of you who missed the one about the Trump chicken. Israeli strike kills at least blank number of people at a Gaza school that the military claims was being used by Hamas. How many did the Israeli strike kill? How many rubber simulated dead kids are they going to have to wheel out for the cameras? Anyone? Symbia says 33. You nailed it. That is correct. Israel struck 33, and they're just at school, trying to learn about the globe and stuff. Trying to learn how to be Truman Show compliant, unquestioning. Just trying to get an education, and then 33 of them got killed. So sad. Look, I'm not even slightly triggered at all by any of this stuff. I'm untriggerable by the news because I know what it is. And if you're triggered by it, you're frightened by images on a screen, or if you're at all emotionally entangled, you have a bad case of MK Ultra. And there is a cure. There is a cure for mind aids, which is the lack of a mental immune system which enables the programmers to program you with anything and everything at will. And the cure, the mind war inoculation, as we call it here, is skepticism. Suspending judgment until you get more facts, and then when the facts don't arrive, settling for question marks. So I have tons of questions and more questions every day, but I don't just collect the questions and then stand on it, which is what truthers do. This is annoying. What are they spraying? What is that 5G tower doing? What are they doing beneath the ground? Questions, questions, questions without any answers. That's why I don't have any patience for transvestigation fetishists. None of them will do their due diligence and watch Stormy Daniels videos while examining pictures of Hunter Biden's laptop and then going through Sylvester Stallone's catalog. They don't do the work. They don't answer the questions, whereas we are here answering our questions as quick as we can, or properly categorizing them as unanswerable, or perhaps even loaded, fake, fallacious, whatever the case is. Anyway, we'll be back live tonight to take calls. Appreciate all the comments, all the research that goes into this. We talked about Ryan Garcia's earthquake prediction. Did not come true because he's a bullshitter, disinformation agent, a paragon of toxic masculinity there to scare the libs about not only boxing and MMA, but conspiracy theories. They want to correlate these things. Notice how many MMA and boxer types are being charged with releasing these types of memes and ideas. And we're about 4 days away from 6/11, which, look, if I'm right about it, and it's a sim, and it's fake, it'll be a great day. If JL is correct, it's a game changer. Things get, I won't say kinetic or real necessarily, but if there is another component, like what are we looking at here? Is there a deeper level to the propaganda than mere political entrainment and narrative control? Maybe there's some kind of spiritual component to be revealed, but we'll see. Anyway, 6/11, we'll look forward to that, and tonight we'll be taking calls. This is Lucifer Tim, 33rd degree. And by the way, before I go here, I'm going to put a link. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, subscribe, because you'll get both live stream notifications, and then you can get in on the calls, and you can get in on the caller queue. So have live stream notifications, and then of course you'll also get archives sent to your inbox. So we'll see you this evening.
across until I saw the most amazing thing. The sun and moon are closing in and all the people carried on down below. Just because they don't know just what's really happening. The sun and moon are closing in. We do not know